I like the way you're such a piece of shit. You don't even link like to just the Patreon. You link directly to the join link. So that that is so outrageous. It's unreal, isn't it? Like,
why do you gotta shit on our business practice? Our business practice.
Listen, mate, I'm not as obnoxious as you in other areas of life, believe it or not. So okay.
You are just as obnoxious.
Not in that area though.
Okay.
Ready to go? Same as I also respect women. Right. So. Episode 63 of ListenLoco. You see how I did that video? So what you do is you slip something under the wire so that if he responds, the episode can't begin. But the episode has begun. So here we are, episode 63 of ListenLoco. We're back into the LCS/LEC. Obviously, it's the spring ending, coming into the summer. The weird thing is, for some reason, LEC starts a week after LCS. I'm not really sure why that is, but whatever. Probably just some sort of Riot bias that allows EU to have an extra week off so they can win MSI, just chill out, relax, come in. Everyone's like, oh, famously, the teams that do well at the MSI don't do well. It's like, you just remember it like 2 times. Stop saying that. It happened like twice. And one of those wasn't exactly that they came back and it was the same game. They came back and they were playing fucking funnel. They came back into Dota 2 from 2013. Like, I can't even blame like that team that came back then. It's not even their fault, is it? So anyway, skipping past all that, obviously, I think it's funny, Riot, that you actually just wrecked the shit out of Team Liquid. Like, they had to just play the MSI final, lose, and then go home and go, well, at least we get a break. And they go, what are you talking about? We're going to start practicing for LCS next week. And they were like, right, well, how am I supposed to integrate all the lessons I learned from MSI? And they were like, I'd just skip everything that happened at MSI like the rest of the region's going to do and just go back in time about 5 months. All right, cool, sick. Let's draft all these teamfight comps. Yeah. And then anyway, the point is we're not going to be talking about any of that shit. That's all pleb shit for the side. That's like people who like the Big Bang Theory, right? Even if you do, don't admit it in public and make us all look at you with that contempt face like, oh, okay, yeah, you like that. Pretend you don't like it. Just keep it as a guilty pleasure, the LCS. That tagline may be there. Keep it as your guilty pleasure. It's the LCS. There you got. Pretty good tagline. Now, the LEC is obviously a region local that crafts world champions. Teams that create a new way to play League of Legends. A way that some would say Koreans don't even understand. Like at this point in time, Faker's probably watching this show hoping to pick up a few tips, I've got a tip for you. Don't pick a Z, you daft cunt. Anyway, continuing on. We're just going around the world here before we get to Europe. So here we are. We're on the LEC episode. We had the first week. Our guest for this one is Vedius. Obviously, you see on many different features, skits, all sorts of shit all over the LEC broadcast. I've noticed that the interesting thing about the way the LEC is done now is that everyone seems to take a turn doing pretty much everything.
Yeah, pretty much.
You like that?
I think it's fun. We still typically keep play-by-plays and colors as play-by-plays and colors. But I don't know. We believe in if you have an idea and it's possible, we'll see if we can fit it in somewhere. And so we try all kinds of crazy stuff. It doesn't really matter who pitches it. We figure out who's the best for the content, and then we run it. So, yeah.
Because that's one thing I actually miss in my game, and I know it's similar in games like Dota, is like there's way more of a divide in those games between like you are a commentator or you're an analyst, and you just live in those worlds, basically. And while on one hand it can be cool, because obviously in theory you could get way better at the one thing you specialize in, I do think it makes you not as like broad a skill set, though, because I always told the people who were the commentators, yeah, you might like the commentary the most, but actually it'll help if you think about it, if you do some analysis and you develop that way of thinking about how to set the game up and the conditions, etc., that'll actually help you when you're a commentator as well, like to think that way, and vice versa, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really valuable that we get to do a variety of different roles and responsibilities. My actual favorite thing to do is like presenting, so I like doing like standalone segments. We usually call them Telestrator segments, but yeah, those are my most fun. I have no idea what we're going to do. Oh, and then we also do really silly things like
Flex
me and Medic have planned that. Yeah, but Medic and I have planned a couple of silly stuff for this split as well. So we'll see if they let us do any of it. But yeah,
I will say I'm just going to call someone out a second, right? Like Medic, here's the thing, son. You're supposed to be the one. I hope he fucking is. I'm going. You're supposed to be the one who has the natural charisma, who has, you know, the ease of talking to people. People, you know, naturally attracted to your personality. Why is all your content just piggybacking on Vedius here? Like, I can tell he's the real. It's like ListenLoco, isn't it? Everyone thinks Loco's a big name. It's not. There's the guy behind the scenes who gets all the shit done and puts in the hours, you know. And what happens is they just come along. They just come along and then they're like, "Oh, it's a duo. Yeah, it's brilliant what we're doing together." It's like, "All right, yeah, really interesting." I just noticed it, Vedius. I've got my eye on you. Don't worry.
I've noticed that, Thorin, you get invited to a lot of these talk shows. You know, like you're the consistent part. It's like, I feel you.
It's all right. It's all right. That's the thing about being a good teammate is that even though you know you did like 70% of it, you just go like, yeah, it was a team effort, guys. We all did well. Exactly. Yeah. No. As long as we all succeed, that's all that matters. But then every now and then, you have to let them know though, just so they know like where the balance of power is. You know.
Medic and I know the true carries don't need to speak up because the world knows who the true carries are, right, Medic? Right.
I mean, if that helps you sleep, all right, fair enough.
See, the problem there was, listen, every now and then I've learned this, Vedius. You have to just give him a chance.
That's entirely right, Loco. You are 100% correct. You and me, man. You and me. Same page.
What the fuck?
I had to give you enough time because you don't realise, Loco. You don't realise how dumb your joke was. Because what you said was the true carries don't need to speak up. And you asked someone who didn't have access to a microphone to speak up. Like, you don't always think...
I knew he would come out. I knew he would come out. Yes, I did.
Didn't at all. But luckily, I saved your ass by fucking calling that. So anyway, LEC has also been stalled a week while LCS is going on. But we had the first week underway. So let's obviously start with that. I mean, a little bit of a false storyline, like I said, but I see why people were worried about it is, will the team that did great at MSI start slow in Europe? For example, you know, people might think, well, maybe the European teams were scrimming during that period. I'm not actually sure if they were really because it was the end of the EU Masters thing. A lot of them changed their lineups, but I'm sure some of them started, you know. So people wanted to know, would G2 take a hit at all? What do you think, Vedius? Didn't look like it to me. It looked pretty fucking good in the first week to me.
Yeah, so I thought that G2 would actually struggle coming back. I didn't think they would take the games very seriously, and I thought that they would still be like 3 patches behind. And I think in their first game, they kind of showcased that they were still playing MSI patch. But fortunately for them, like the meta is still very solo lane focused, and they're still really good players. And Yanko's got Jarvan 2 games in a row, so I think it was actually really easy for them because they didn't actually have to adapt that much. And it turns out that their opponents so far have not been able to close the gap that much. I thought Origen put up a really good fight.
Yes.
I was quite pleased with what I got to saw between both teams. But yeah, G2 are a little too good at League of Legends.
Like, by the way, Loco, like, give us an idea. I'm assuming you didn't watch all the games.
I watched all the games.
You, by the way.
I watched.
You really watched all the LEC games? Oh, God bless. But anyway, right, so start off on that note. So on the G2 angle, like, the first game they had against Splyce, like, this actually just shows how much better G2 is as a team in Europe, unfortunately. Because if you look at the draft here, like, Splyce got, like, everything they want. This looks like a great set of champions for them. It's exactly the sort that they want to play. The game even starts, it was like, 10 minutes? There's nothing happening on the whole map. This is like a dream if you're Splyce. This is exactly how you want a game to be set up. But the problem is, when G2 starts going, how the fuck are you supposed to do anything?
I mean, the Herald fight I thought was really telling, where Splyce kind of felt like they had to force stuff, and G2's like, all right, you want to force stuff? Like, just force stuff. You're going to lose the team fight. It felt like Splyce had no way to win. And
put it this way, bearing in mind they clearly wanted to team fight. When they were behind, they did somehow get mind fucked into engaging loads of those fights that probably could have like been disengaged.
And just Perkz Silas was too fucking crazy. So as Rumble, your level 11 power spike is supposed to be, this is where we team fight, this is where we can be better than the other team. Or not Perkz, Cap Silas. And
Caps, yes.
Yeah, and Caps is like, okay, well, I'm also a level 11 Silas, and I'm just going to steal your ult, and I'm just going to fucking Rumble ult better than you did. And where Cap Silas ult carried the fight, Vizitachi's Rumble ult was kind of meh. So I thought that was the real difference maker in a lot of the team fights. Like, Cap's just carrying the fuck out of the team.
Yeah,
you know what? This might sound BM. I realize people will disagree here. But the more I've watched Silas, right, I feel like there should be a change to that champion along the lines of like, whatever ult you steal, you only get like the AP and AD of the person you stole it from or something. Because that's the thing that's so tilt-worthy. It's like if the Sylas is super strong, or even the ults he's stealing are better than the other person's ult if they did it themselves. Like, I know the logic that Riot would use would be like, just don't let him get to that point. It's one of those ones like, it's on a timer. It's like, it's all well and good saying that, but when you're at the pro level, it's so hard to be able to do that in the actual match.
I think he's got like really big nerfs coming. I can't remember. I think they're on the PB, but I'm pretty sure Sylas is getting nerfed.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly how they're nerfing him, but I remember he's definitely taking some mighty thwacks to the face. But I definitely think that I agree. I think that it is a little ridiculous that not only at level 16 is it at like a 9-second cooldown, but you get to ulti pretty much better than everyone on your team. And I mean, like, the old argument I had when he first came out was, oh, he's only as good as the ults that are on the enemy team. And like, turns out that's not really true.
That's not true, actually.
That's not objectively. That's just not true.
It sounded like there was something to it, but after seeing the way it's played, it ain't true at all, is it?
No.
Vedius,
So,
I watched your top 20 player ranking, and you had Perkz rated so lowly.
Wait a minute. What was the
that wasn't my
context
top
of this?
20.
Though?
There was no top. I didn't do a top 20. What are you talking about?
What are you talking about here?
Wait, what do you mean? You guys did a top 20 player list. Top 20 LEC.
I didn't. Dracos and Frost did.
Oh my fucking god. Oh my. I confused the two of you guys. My bad. Did you see Draco's rating though? He had Perkz rated so fucking low. Did you agree on it? Because I heard.
Well, so what was this ranking though? What was the context? Was it actually supposed to be like top 20 players now?
I think so. They said going into spring.
They said there would be a lot of recency bias.
So my list would have had all 5 G2 players in the top 5.
Okay.
Right. So like, a lot of people had issues with that idea because like we spoke with Upset and like Soraz was vocal on social media where like when you're on a good team you look better than you are, and the argument is that players on this G2 roster look better because the whole team is really good, right? And I'm like, well, I mean, to a degree that's true, but like I also think that Perkz has shown a level of consistency and a level of carry performance that I haven't actually seen from many AD carries here in Europe for a while. And I mean, you only have to take his game against Origen to kind of prove that. But I would have had all 5 G2 players in the top 5 probably. I maybe would have. I maybe would have kicked one out to put Nuke Duck in, but yeah.
Is there not a text version of this list anywhere? I'm looking, I can't find it at the moment.
It's just on video. Maybe people put it on text. Like it was Frost and Dracos doing like a top 20 players list.
I don't think I can find a text version. Whatever. That's the sort of thing, really. If you want to talk about, we should prepare local. So for that, it could have been interesting to actually have the list, wouldn't it?
I watch all LEC content, Doran. I'm very studious.
You don't fucking write anything down, do you?
All over again.
I know, exactly.
I just thought I just thought my carry teammate would do the work and actually watch it too.
Yeah, well, I'll just have to do the whole show for you instead, right? So anyway,
I mean, what I like about this is Thorin didn't watch a piece of content that I wasn't on, yet you did, and then you accused me of something that I didn't do.
I know. Exactly.
I was close.
I mean,
all you casters are the same. You guys talk. You guys are BM towards NA, except for Ender.
You have to realize we don't even see sex and gender. Like he just saw for a score and he thought, is that Vedius? I don't know. I'm just listening to the insight. I'm not trying to judge people. That's the thing about you, Alan. I love Loco. You aren't a bigot in any way. You just see past all categories.
I love everyone.
Exactly. Right. Anyway, this is a question I have to ask you though. Is right. So obviously, because G2 won these games, and in the context of each of the games, they did win pretty well. Like even the OG game, which was a good game, they were like in control of that at most points in time. Like one thing I have to say about G2 that is just, I think this is one of those examples of something where to take a strength from someone, you have to accept the weakness, and oftentimes it's because the weakness is the strength when it manifests at the wrong time. And the most obvious example of this Vedius is like, it's kind of crazy that at this point we actually could make an argument for Caps to be the best League of Legends player in the world. Because I don't think I've ever seen someone who could be the best League of Legends player in the world int as many times in real official games that his team wins as Caps. Like in both of these games, he has moments where it's like Why is he just going balls deep on that then? Like in the Splyce game, there's one where he just went right under the tower with Silas. Then there was the game against OG. There was a bunch of times there where he just went super far in and just got caught like almost immediately. It's like, but it's so bizarre because obviously the guy, in other parts of the game, he does look like a genius, so I can't like question his decision making entirely. But there are times where he just seems to go way out of bounds. Like you feel like if he could tone down that last 5%, he'd be unbeatable.
Yeah. I just feel like he's an oops player, you know? Oops, didn't mean to do that, happened anyway. But I don't know. I would love to sit there and make the argument that Caps is the best player in the world, but the argument that always gets thrown in your face is consistency, and it's largely because of the things that you highlight, right? And that's why a lot of people bring Wonder into the conversation, right? Because the thing about Wonder is he very rarely is a detriment to his team, yet somehow he always has an impact, right? But the problem there is that arguably Wonder doesn't have the same highs that Caps necessarily does, right? So you're like, which one do you put on top of the other? And it depends which one you value more. I really liked Frost's argument, which was that if you were ever drafting your own team and you had the selection of the LEC players, who'd you go for?
Like, take Wonder first, I assume she's going to say, right?
Oh, no, she would go Caps, but so would I. Both of us would immediately
What's the logic for
Caps.
that then?
So I would take Caps just because I know how much value he brings to a mid lane role. I think that he's unrivaled domestically, and I think that you would not find a better player. The only person I would consider was like if Perkz still played mid. I mean, like Nuke Duck does fine, right? But I just think that Caps is just so special in his ability to play make that I would immediately put him in first. So.
Right, that's what confuses me there, though, because that sort of goes against the argument you just made. Like, here's the thing. I agree, Caps is probably the best player in Europe, but if we were both making teams, right, here's the difference. If I take Wonder and then you take Caps and then I take Nuke Duck, right, you can have any top lane you want at that point in time, mate. I think I got the better side of the deal.
True.
You know the point if you were like making a team in that sense?
I mean, yeah, but I
like
still
there's some very
like,
good other top laners, but I don't think.
But that's my point. Yeah, I think that I think like there are good enough top laners right now that like I'd be fine dealing with Wonder, but then like it's. I don't really want to play against either, if being honest.
Sure.
The choice between playing against Caps or playing against Wonder, I'm like,
no, that's also, by the way,
Wonder,
that's also what makes them both OP in their own way, is they play on the same fucking team as well. Like, that's one of the things that, unfortunately, when you're making a team, I don't blame coaches and GMs. It's very hard to know how players will actually, like, complement each other in the game until they've played. But, like, that's why, to go back to your original comment about this team, like, I personally wouldn't put all 5 of these players as the 5 best players in Europe. But I tell you what, of all the, like, super teams I've ever seen, it's about the closest I would say to that. Like, like put it this way: if you want to go position by position, I think at least 4 would probably be the best players in Europe in their position.
I mean, like, there are
that shows how complementary they are.
They're top 2 or top 3, right? Regardless, like, and there are a lot of arguments to suggest that they are the best players in their role. Maybe when the team was formed, there was obviously a lot of arguments to suggest was Mickey necessarily the best support given Hylissang's last year? Was Yankus even the best jungler when Brox's last year? You know, but I think like right now they seem to be in an environment where like it's a meme, but like they all have so much fun together. Like I think it's been very difficult to illustrate like how. When you're in an environment where you enjoy so much the people that you play with and work with, it only makes you better, right? And I think very rarely have we seen esports teams where everyone is just like all on the same page. They all love hanging out together. They all love how they all approach the game. And then they find this level of success. And I think this is one of those situations where not only has the G2 players individually shown a lot of growth over the last few years, they all agree on how to play the game and they all have an insane amount of fun doing it. So like they can only get better. And it's just very impressive to watch. So I love.
Plus, I'll just throw in as well the reason why also I'm not that harsh on the Perkz one, even though I do think there are some areas he still has some clear flaws where he hasn't like figured out how to be an AD carry at times. Some of the fights he definitely does some weird stuff still. He knows he does. But I will say this, first of all, obviously it's one of the weakest positions in Europe, especially among the top teams. Like that tends to be the position at the moment. It's just like, yeah, they've got good players, but they're not going to be at the best European player. So you don't have to be the best to be one of the best of that role at the moment. And then secondly, actually the area probably he's the most underrated in Perkz is forget how you play the role, who else is in your team. The guy's champion pool is fucking amazing at AD carry right now.
Yeah.
How many AD carries in the entire world can boast a champion pool like Perkz has at the moment? Like, that's probably the most impressive part, I'd say, overall. And I don't know if that comes from the mentality of mid laners where, you know, they're already used to having to play 10 things every split, and so they just open to the idea of playing the new stuff. Because, you know, that's one of the things at the moment, because we've had this discussion on a lot of the last few episodes, Loco, about how AD carry isn't in theory as powerful a role at the moment. Like, people don't tend to play through AD carry in most of the big regions, etc. Well, another factor I think plays into it definitely is that so many of the AD carries, because they're used to, I think it's like, this is a difference between a paradigm, a way of thinking, right? Because they're used to the world in which not only do I have to survive my matchup in the bot lane, like it can't be a really bad matchup, but then when I get to late game, I have to potentially be able to carry a whole team fight. So too many of them are still stuck in the world where it's like, I've got to have a comfort champion because I've got to be good in the laning phase. Then when I get to the team fight, I've got to know all my cooldowns, but what they don't realize is that actually isn't the way League of Legends is right now. Like, actually right now, some of these amazing AD carries should expand their champion pool a little bit more. Don't make it as obvious in the draft as to where you're going. Like, you can see with some of the best ADCs in LEC and LCS, like there's like 3 champions that they're going to pick between. And as soon as you do your part of the draft, you can just tell where it's going. So like, I think some of them are making it too telegraphed there. Like, I mean, at least people like Double have to start to expand, but you can't be playing 3 things. Come on. In the past, you could, of course.
One thing I will say about Perkz is not just his champion pool, his teleport usage is also the best on an AD carry. I've never seen AD carries use teleport that well. He flanks with it.
You do. To be fair though, he does also have like the best follow-up you could ever want if you were going to teleport behind someone as an AD carry. Like a lot, like someone like Doublelift doesn't even. Like, he hasn't even played that game. Like he's playing League of Legends. Like whatever this shit is, Loco, where you could teleport him behind and then your top and mid dive on the. Like he'd love to play that game, but like for him, that's like, what's that? A new game Riot's developing? What's that called? Like skirmish chess or something like. No one else has got that team, have they? I know what you mean, but he does have a pretty sick on team to do it.
Also, I really want to go on top of Vedius' point, what he said about G2 being really close. I think there's been like few Brotherhood teams, and when a Brotherhood team has like really good players and you get along, it's so fucking strong, and you fix problems so really well too. Like the original C9, the Coup Tigers, the TSM roster with like Haunter, Bjergsen, Doublelift, Svenskar, and Biofrost, like those kind of like Brotherhood teams, I actually think do so well. And if you can keep them together and the players don't deteriorate, like those are like the rosters that orgs like dream of. And G2 is one of them. They are like a Brotherhood team.
The sad thing is though, go on, mate.
In reference to your other point as well, where you're talking a lot about Perkz, Thorin, this is where my favorite meme around Umajan. He's here to revolutionize the world of AD carries.
To some degree, he is.
I love the no longer will AD carries sit under their turret and farm a 500 CS. It's like now he plays on the front line. He's playing split push. He's like TP flanking at level 3. Like it's just, it's such a beautiful meme, and I love it so much.
The only thing is, though, you know the section where he says, like the problem with that meme is the first part where it says, like, no longer will AD carries just sit under their towel. That's where Forgiven's like that James Franco meme, like, you know, like, that's the problem. I said this to Perkz before. That's why it sucks, actually, that Forgiven didn't come back this split, because obviously this would have been the perfect time for that storyline.
I thought he would. I genuinely thought he would join Vitality. I thought of all the teams that he would.
There was a couple of good
Vitality
rumors. Yeah, it could have been one in LCS, one in LEC, but I don't know.
I don't know.
Well, we'll get to that later, Vedius, but I'm going to go ahead and say right now, this is the split where both Splyce and Vitality, unfortunately, are going to get the harsh truth, which teams like G2 have actually learned from, which is that just because you do like pretty good, like maybe you meet or slightly over exceed your expectations, you can't do that logic of like, right, well, I'll just take that and I'll go into the next split and it'll just keep getting better. It's like, for all you know, maybe you reached your potential as a team, you know. Sometimes, as harsh as it is, you got to be willing to do that ballsy roster upgrade, the one that like is a gamble, but it could also make you better as well, which is what obviously a team like G2 did a great example of. They could have just taken that top 4 at Worlds and said, hey, you know what we did in Hishon? You did fine, guys. You exceeded expectations. Let's go and play and try and become the best team. But instead what they did is they made the big moves that, yeah, obviously I'm giving a very extreme example because it worked out super well. But I think some of those teams out there, that's a problem with coaching, unfortunately, because a coach has to always believe his players can get better. And we know we can make what we're doing tighter and we can improve. That's where like someone who's the GM sometimes has to put themselves on the line, in my opinion. So Vitality, if we want to move to them now, they're a great example of a team where like I have very low expectations, I've got to say, Vedius. I think this is a team where, like, if you look at what they had to do to win in the last split, and you look at where the world is now and how all the rosters have had their time to play together, and we've even got upgraded rosters. Like, I think this is just a playoff team. Like, I don't think this team will contend.
I think that's fair. I actually had like really high expectations of Vitality coming in, largely because I felt like the meta just suited them. And like I spoke to Yamato a lot, and he talked about how Jizuke was in a really bad situation last split because he had some health issues that stopped him from playing. So I was like, okay, if you actually like for the first 7 weeks of the split, you had a really good split. You actually like sat like second or the top of the table.
Yeah,
and,
killed it.
I was like, okay, so coming into this split, if Cabo and Jizuke are playing as well as they did for most of the regular season, then surely they should just have an advantage coming into the split.
I would agree. The meta looked set up for that.
Yeah. And then the first week, we see Jizuke. I don't even know what he was doing.
He looked so
we see
bad.
Mowgli running it down. We see the bot lane just having a... like, I have no idea what happened to this team, but, like, I had so much higher expectations of what they could have been, and I'm just very surprised by what they actually delivered on the day. I expected a lot more from them.
I think they were good at what they were good at for such a long time, and they didn't improve beyond that. Like, usually you see teams develop an identity and they build on it, but they didn't build on anything. And also, that's kind of the question I have to you. Like, who is Jizuke now? Like, he was supposedly the third best mid laner in EU. It went Caps, Nuke Duck, Jizuke. I don't even think that's true anymore, and he is regressing. I didn't know about the health issues, but yeah, I'm really disappointed about Jizuke.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, as well as that, like, the rookies have only gotten better. Like, Nemesis, compared to last split, seems like a different mid laner.
Abadage.
Humanoid also is dramatically improving. Like, even Abadage, the dude that had, like, the most isolated deaths out of every mid laner last split, is now suddenly, like, playing Aatrox and having a great game on Rise. And, like, his team is a separate discussion, but, like, these other mid laners are climbing up. And Jizuke was that rookie that came in that was like challenging the top teams and was like solo carrying. So I'm really surprised by his sudden fall. And I think regression is actually like a pretty good word, because honestly, like the peak that we've seen from him, I feel like we haven't seen it for a while, and we definitely haven't seen any like improvement from that point.
I also just died inside when I saw that Azir pick on Jizuke. I was like, well, what's the point of this? Like, you are Vitality. Are you aware of that? Like, do you think you were drafting the other side? What is this shit? Like,
it's funny because when they were actually like really dominant, when they like first came into the split and they had that insane regular season run, all of their losses were on Azir as well. Like, he was known for things like his Zoe and his Rise, and whenever he played the scaling Azir, he would lose those games. Yeah, I don't think it's his champion.
I mean, it makes sense. Like, you know, the game for Vitality is get Jizuke ahead.
Also,
I mean,
I pick something that by default gets you behind.
Oh man, yeah, I've been super disappointed in Jizuke. I hope he gets better, because like he was a really good mid laner, but
sure.
Yeah, it's really sad.
Cabo still looks really fucking good. Cabo, like, is on an island. Like, Cabo is so flexible.
Gets to play some carry champs at least.
Dude, if you want him to be a win condition, if you want to give him resource, he can be that person. If you want to just leave him on an island and build leads, like, he's so flexible, and he is by far the best player on this team. I think this team probably has the highest gap between the best player on the team and the worst player on the team. I think Cabo Shard up here and Attila or Jack Troll down there, like, the difference between like their top side and their bot side is so fucking immense.
I mean, we won't even go into that, because you have to realize, I'm sure like some of the worst teams have some appalling player, and then if they just have one good player, it'd be like a bigger gap. But as a general point, we'll take that on board, Loco. We won't waste our time arguing that one.
Dude,
So anyway,
wait, you don't think Attila's terrible? Like, dude, Attila Sivir versus OG, where they're getting ganked and he turns around to get one auto off and gets both of them. Like, I don't know.
I've personally never thought Attila was a very good player, so I don't know what like the shock there is. Like, I just thought he was a player who his reputation got carried along with Vitality doing well and having good placings and stuff. But if I had to pick the players on the team, I pretty much always would have had him last place, except when they had some of the whack junglers. That's about it. So, like, I actually think the support player's not bad. Although that new name is actually crap compared to the old one, but whatever.
What was he before Jack Troll?
Mini True Packs or whatever he was called. It's like, there's a way better name in it. So, let me think. I'm trying to think of, the problem is, though, you look at some of the other teams in the league, Loco. Like, if you look at, for example, I mean, fucking Woolite's back in the league for a start off. Just saying. There's a lot of players who aren't that great in the LEC, mate.
Dude, when Woolite finally won a game, he's like, "Oh my god, I finally won a game in LEC." He literally said that on mic check. He was like so fucking relieved that he finally won.
It's actually really sad too, because like this is probably the most stacked in terms of bot lanes that Europe's ever had. And then you contrast that to like the top end bot lanes that we have versus the bot end, and there's a pretty stark difference. Like you can have whatever opinion you want on Reckless, but the guy is a good AD carry and he works very well with Hillsang. We've also got Upset and Ignar, which is another very strong duo. Kobe and Norscarin, I think, are also extremely strong. And then we've got Perkz and Mickey. So I think like we have a really competitive bot side of the map, which is why like I actually liked your point about like taking gambles when it comes to rosters, or at least having like, you know how we now have EU Masters teams like signing like new talent, potential talent that can like come in and challenge, because like it feels that our bot lanes right now are really stacked, and they've already proven multiple times before like the gap between them and the people below them, and they've only gotten better. So yeah, I think that the top heavy teams have only gotten better, and I think like it's kind of, I'm a little worried because last split we had a lot of exciting storylines, a lot of upsets. It wasn't clear cut, like there were all these crazy stuff. This split, I think it's going to be way more clear cut. I think Fnatic, Origen, and G2 are a lot better than everyone else. I think Splyce is close, but I haven't quite figured out how close Splyce is to the rest. And then there's the rest. And then the rest underneath those four, I think can all end up pretty much anywhere. But like the three top teams, I think have only gotten better from last split. Which means I think Europe is only going to be more top heavy. It's like it's good for World's perspective, but like for the league, I think it's going to be very one-sided split.
Well, one bot lane you did not mention there was OG's bot lane. Patrick and
That's
Missy.
true.
And the interesting thing is, there's obviously some pretty good storylines for both those players. Because first of all, Patrick had a very good week individually, and obviously had a lot of highlight moments and big plays. And I'll actually give him credit. He was one of the AD carries who obviously had a bazillion things in his champion pool and was willing to go wherever they wanted in the draft. So I actually think, to some degree, he of the newer AD carries is more of the Perkz mindset in that respect. He's not somebody who's only playing his comfort champs or whatever, and whatever he thinks can carry the game. And then also on the other side, even though OG looked good this week, like I actually thought that G2 game was a good example of a game where, even though I don't actually believe in the concept of like moral victories, like definitely don't think that was a win even though you lost, they did look very good in the loss. Like they did a great sort of like impression of G2 against G2. They were getting their own picks, they were finding their own counter engages, it was looking good. But the one flaw I would have in that bot lane was, how many fucking times does Mithy get caught out and just killed solo, like completely isolated? Like he's the guy who walks in, gets caught and then killed, and then he comes back out.
Mithy,
what is that? And the mad thing about it is, right, I've no doubt if I could hear their comms that he's the one making a lot of those great calls for the re-engages and when to like make a rotation on someone, or we can take this fight. But like some of his own individual moves are so whack though. It's bizarre that he makes such bad moves for such a veteran player, you know.
I call him a scaling support. I feel he gets better the longer the split goes on. But like, I remember the first half of last split, he had like the most deaths of any player. He was pretty much the reason Origen were losing games at the beginning of last split. And yeah, I agree. I definitely think that he made a lot of individual mistakes this week in particular. And I do hope that it is just the beginning of split thing. I've seen him like get out of these situations before. So I'm not too concerned right now, but as you rightly said, I am very excited about Patrick because he seems way more aggressive. He seems a lot more confident in his abilities, and I think he's a very exciting player to watch. So OG lineup, definitely an exciting one for me. And like they remind me a lot of SKT. A lot of people sit there and look at me like, how can you compare the two teams? Well, I actually think they're very comparable because they actually possess the ability to play through. I think they can play through every single lane. They have a multitude of strategies. They have a very diverse champion pool. The biggest difference between the current SKT and Origen is like the jungler's level of aggression. I don't think Cold could keep up with, say, a Clid in terms of how they play the early game, but they remind me a lot of each other. And I think that with the rate at which Patrick is developing, I think that you can rely a lot more on that bot lane to be a bigger and bigger carry threat. So I'm excited about this Origen roster. I do hope that they can challenge G2 as the split progresses.
Sure. No, I can see the point there, right? And this is going to always be a problem, sadly, in a community that has so many young people, Vedius, or people who haven't had a lot of experience in sport in general, is that all they're going to do is do this. If they don't like the comparison the first second they hear it, they'll pick the one thing they can find that doesn't fit. Well, obviously, there's going to be a million things don't fit in the comparison. For example, they don't even have the same names and not in South Korean. Like, we can all find stupid reasons. But the point is this. The question you need to ask when Vedius says that is, in what areas is he drawing the contrast? And so if he points out, like, for example, in theory, they should have a great bot lane. Maybe they should play through the AD carry. Their best player maybe is the mid lane. There's a million angles you can go with on that. That's pretty legit. I would say one key difference, and this is actually an interesting one to tie into OG, is on SKT, I've never personally been a believer that you could play away from Khan's lane. Like, I've just seen him be too whacked with it too many times. Whereas actually, obviously, it's basically what fucking Alphari's whole MO is. It's like, you can play away from me all day. But I would go the other way on that one. I actually think, I agree with you. If they wanted to, they could absolutely play through top a lot more. And they could definitely put him on carries sometimes. So I actually think that's the missing element for OG, perhaps, is to get some more played through Alphari, because we have definitely a very good pool of players in Europe. But if you make it too obvious as a team that like the SKT approach, we can just play anywhere through the team. It's like sometimes you got to just press the advantage. Like, if you have the right matchup, just go for it. Because I have to say, the thing about OG that tells me not only do they have good players everywhere, but I do think their coaching staff is good, is I very rarely think they do bad drafts generally. Like, they nearly always get what it looks like they want, what they understand. At least 3 champions that'll be like almost signatures for those players. Like, they really, really do a good job. And true, they have great players, but I think they just generally know what they're doing as a team. Like, they're not a team that I feel are lost in the game in that sense.
How'd you feel about the Sejuani first pick into Camille mid with Tom Shona Vedius?
So, I know it's an LCK thing where, like, Sejuani Camille is just considered, like, insanely strong.
It's the new Irelia Sejuani,
Yeah. But I believe it works even better when... So, like, the consistency that I've seen is that in the LCK, they did it when they got Sona Taric, and then in Europe, they did it again when they got Sona Taric. And I think that when you, like, think of the synergy, right, it allows you to go double AD with a scaling AP bot, but, like, the amount of CC that you have in the team fights, the scaling that you get, your ability to play, like, 1-3-1, team fight, like, everything, I actually think that whilst Sejuani Camille is good and solid, what makes that really strong is the Sona Tom or Sona Taric bot lane. I think that's what actually makes it, like, insanely, I'm going to say, when you tear or break something, it maybe breaks the game. I don't know. Who knows? But I definitely think it's a little too strong. And I think Sona Taric is strong and that should just be removed. But in any case, yes, I do quite like the drafts from Origen. I think that something Deficio always tells me all the time is we're really good at preparing. We have a good plan all the time, and we're always very aware of what we want to do, and we're very good. But the thing that G2 always tells me is if you ruin their plan, that they're not very good at pivoting or adapting.
That sounds very Korean-like.
Yeah, but I think very few teams are good enough to, like, break their plan, and I think G2 so far has been the only team that can, like, disrupt their game plan and strategy and what they actually set out to do in the game. So hopefully they show more development on that, and I think they did a little bit when they played up against G2, considering how chaotic the game was.
They countered well. Yeah.
The
problem is, though, I will say that actually did highlight, I think, a problem that every team's going to have playing against G2. It's like there were many times in that OG G2 game where I think that OG thought, right, we can actually just run away from this fight. We don't have to take it.
Yeah.
It's like the follow-up from G2. Like, you can just tell unless you've played against that, like, you don't know what it's like. Like, they just keep going and keep going. And, like, in the past, like, this used to be the thing way back in the day when I first started watching Korean League of Legends that always confused me. It's because they were the absolute best at knowing, like, right, one of us has got caught, but we can all get out. So just let this one guy die, and we'll give that up for now because, the game state's still fine. And I always used to say when I would watch it with people I knew the game, like, why don't they just go in on this fight? Like, what, gamble, go for it. And they were like, nah, they know that this isn't the right one to take. It's like the problem is when you do that against G2, you almost never get out. Like, it's very rare there's a fight that starts then no one's dying in it. So, like, the amount of follow-up they have, and also that tells me as well, Vedius, when players play like that, like, basically, they, like, someone like Patrick, who obviously could do mad team fight damage, runs out of a fight immediately when it starts. That suggests to me that these teams have all played G2 in scrims, and they're even more insane like that. Like, I bet in scrims, they just go super balls deep. So, like, we can't take this fight now, basically. Because you saw when Splyce tried to go, like, no, we love fights. It's like that wasn't a great look for them either. They got murked. Splyce at one point in time started that fight around the Rift Herald. They started it 5v4 and still lost.
Yes.
So the amount of intimidation in these scenarios, like, it's very hard to put it this way. Like, fighting against G2 is like, it doesn't matter if you go into the fight saying all this, like, you can't pull the trigger. They're just like fucking Rick out of Rick and Morty, like, do it, motherfucker, do it.
It's really funny that you mentioned that, because I was speaking to Grabs during MSI, and I was like, so how's the team doing? How's practice going? How's all that? He was like, scrimming IG was like one of the least productive things we've ever done, because both of those teams are just so chaotic. He was like, I don't know if we learned anything. I don't know. It's crazy. Like, it's just fighting all the time. Like, you definitely get to test your limits, but you so like, I can definitely imagine that scrimming that team is pretty crazy. And yeah, I often wonder how much value you get. Anyway, we talked a lot about G2 and OG. Do you want to keep talking about them, or do you want to talk about a different team?
No, we can move on from that a little bit. The thing is, though, I do think when you look, just to put a cap on that, like, OG looks like the clear second best team still. Yeah. Like, they look really good. The problem is, and it's a little bit depressing, is sure, there was hints in this game here, but we still don't know that they could actually win if G2's in their way. That's the problem at the moment. So, like, that storyline has got to build up, because at the moment, it does look to me like I could see G2 definitely losing some games because they play so risky, but, like, there's nobody is a favorite against them in any scenario at the moment.
Nope, but I will challenge the idea that OG are clear-cut the second favorite. I think that right now, based on the week 1 games, there is an argument to be made that Fnatic could take that number 2 spot.
Wow, really?
Okay, go ahead and make it.
Purely because of Broxah. Broxah seems to be playing out of his mind right now. And
yeah, because he won't be playing in the fucking server if he doesn't.
I mean, yeah, perhaps that's the reason, right? Perhaps that's the pressure, but I legitimately think that the synergy that we're seeing between Broxah and his solo laners seems to be so different from what we saw last split, where it was just draft team fight, play around bot, get Reckless into a position where he can carry, and then we'll win games because we're better players, right? And we'll team fight through. This time around, it feels like Nemesis is playing better. Broxah is enabling him. They're enabling their top side of the map. And I just think that the faster pace game is very good. Obviously, the biggest counter argument is their mid game still has a couple issues where they're clearly making like poor decisions. They're going for fights that they shouldn't. Like that Drake versus Misfits nearly cost them the whole game. So I think there are arguments to be made that if Fnatic get better from what we saw from week 1, they can definitely challenge that number 2 spot.
Mm. Yo, so can you explain what exactly happened?
The only thing is, I will just add in one piece of context.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't exactly play the best teams, though.
They didn't. That's true.
You know,
I mean, Origen and G2 play against each other, but that just builds more hype for next week. Origen play against Fnatic, so we'll get to see.
Listen, if there's one thing I'm never going to get caught buying into, it's called Fnatic potential. Like, they have to actually first videos. I'm not just going to do nothing around like, oh, they could be fucking really good. But yeah, that's the trap every fucking Fnatic fan's been
job, man. I got to tell you, Fnatic's good at League of Legends.
Right, yeah, that is actually in the contract when you join the LEC broadcast. It's like, every third broadcast you must in fact say they are good. Otherwise, someone whose name begins with S and surname begins with M cries. Right. So what was it, Loco? What were you saying? What topic were we going to go into there, mate?
Wait, so what exactly happened in Fnatic offseason? So I heard Broxah and Reckless got into a fist fight. Obviously not true. And then Broxah made his point because he's like getting benched. Or like he's sharing his.
There's no way they got to do a fist fight. That'd be more like the fucking old, in like the 19th century, people like whipping gloves in each other's face. Like, sir, you are disrespecting me, sir. I demand satisfaction. And then they played a game of Uno, and whoever won, fucking stay in the team. Reckless is like, right, out you go. In comes the sub. So yeah, they've got a sub jungler now, Loco.
Mm-hmm. So what was like the Broxah Reckless drama? Like, did something actually happen, or is it just like
I don't
Twitter
think
stuff?
there was any drama. I think my understanding, and this is purely from Broxah's post, was that the reason why they brought Dan on was because, according to Reckless, they think that Dan is good enough that he deserves a spot to compete in LEC, right?
He was doing well in Masters.
Wow.
Right, and so from a team perspective, they think it's good to just have 2 junglers who are both good. And the same idea that it's good when they had Bwipo and SOAS, right? Both are good. They both ideally bring something slightly different, so you can like mix and match. And so the way in which Reckless portrays it is that it's like a 6-man roster where you just diversify your styles a little bit, right? And for junglers, I actually see that the most, because if you have an early aggressive jungler versus like a passive scaling jungler, just for argument's sake, then sure, each style has its value depending on the situation, maybe, right? But the way Broxah framed it in his post was that he wanted to prove that they didn't need a sub jungler, and that he was fine by himself, and that he had a great split, and that, they didn't really need to bring a sub jungler on. So the honest truth is I don't have the full context. I don't really know. All I do know is that Broxah seems to be playing much better very early on compared to last split. And I think that Dan would have to do something pretty amazing to warrant bringing him over Broxah in right now. But I don't know. So
thing is, I'm not even someone who hates on Broxah generally. I do generally agree with Veteran's take on it, that if you look in past years, I think he did get overrated because he had fucking amazing lanes all around him. He's on the absolute best team. And crucially, this is the fact that I think people missed, was he basically played his whole LEC career around Caps. So he played around Caps, always at mid. And as you notice, it's not even like you have to communicate with Caps. You just follow up. You do whatever he's going, right? Follow him. He's going to make his own decisions. That's great if you're a jungler. The guy already knows what he wants to do. And then for most of his career in top lane, he had Soaz. That's a fucking jungler's dream right there. You don't even have to go top sometimes. And then when he did have Whippo, it was at times when it was obvious they were going to play through Whippo. So I think in some ways, although he clearly is a player with talent, some of his career up to this year was almost on rails. He knew the way it was going to go. It was set up how it was going to be. Well, a lot of junglers don't live in that world. A lot of junglers, they're the one who has to be the playmaker. They're the one who has to figure out what's going to happen, to communicate with the laners, to game plan before. Basically, skill sets that he maybe didn't even have to flex into, didn't even have to learn, didn't have to build in. So you see now when he gets a complete rookie as his mid laner, we saw Whippo clearly had his own issues integrating into 2019, wasn't the same player he was before. There's a lot of fires to put out here if you're Broxah, and now he's having, hopefully through putting pressure on him by bringing in Dan, now he's going to have to become the player who does that. Because I would contrast Broxah in that sense with Reckless, actually, where Reckless had to discover what it meant to not just be a player who plays for comfort and plays at the times that you want to do stuff in the game. No, you have to be willing to take your opportunity wherever it is in the game. And so it's a mentality change, which is one of the hardest things to do, to be fair. So if Broxah can pull it off, I'll give props to Youngbuck for that, for the other members of the team, etc. But it's hard to change your identity as a player, obviously, when it's so set and it's set around certain factors that don't exist for you anymore. You don't have Caps, you don't have Soaz. That must be rough.
Whippo is, if you were the Shy and you had bad mechanics, I think that's what Whippo looks like. Whippo's so aggressive and all the fucking time without kind of having some kind of restraint on it. And Broxah played well to it, but I do think it's going to be problematic later on.
Bad mechanics is a bit too far. I would just say more his decision making's more questionable. Here's the thing: if the Shy here's the difference, right? If the Shy goes for a ridiculous move and dies, I've just seen the Shy pull off too many ridiculous moves. So I'm actually, I might be wrong here. Maybe he had a 5% chance of pulling that off, But the problem is when Whippo does it, my analogy for Whippo basically is fucking old SKT Marin, because I think that is the most overrated player in the history of League of Legends, because people literally acted like he was a genius. First of all, people lied and they said he was the shot caller. He wasn't. Secondly, people said that because he was the shot caller, that all those pushes he did top were genius moves to drag the jungler top and to trick the enemy jungler so that Faker would have time to move and then the bot lane was, except he wasn't doing any of that because he wasn't the shot caller. And as you saw when he left SKT, all he did is push all day long, even when he had no fucking Faker, when there was no. So it's a great example of where people let narratives overtake reality, and what was a fun narrative became reality and then went completely out of control. So I would say reel it back in again. Whippo, if he had the right team as he did with that, he looked like a fucking monster. He was the tip of the spear, The problem is in this team, where they already had these other identity crises at mid and then obviously jungle, they had to reformulate the team. That's why I personally was never that hyped even when they won all those games, because I was when you get to a best of 5 series, this team looks like as soon as something goes wrong, it's going to fall apart. So I still think you look at Fnatic, obviously they have the pieces. They have the pieces to win LCS, to be fair, especially if Nemesis can come along, but it's whether you can put those pieces together in an order that makes sense. At the moment, they're disparate pieces to me.
They just feel empty without Caps. This team is functional, and as you said, this team is good, and they can be a top-tier team, but we just saw them with Caps, and then now we see them without Caps, and it's ugh.
So Caps just walks in the Fnatic house. Alexa, play Eminem without me. .mp3 and then walks out.
And that's what it feels like. Like Caps truly made this team special, and he brought everything together.
I will say that I think Fnatic has actually had a history of really good mid laners. If we think like they had Peke, then into Febiven, and then after Febiven it was Caps, right? Mm-hmm. And then like the thing that everyone forgets is like the actual transitional period that Caps went to get to this point, right? Sure. Like on Caps' debut, he solo killed Perkz. Everyone's like, "Oh, that was amazing! That was insane! You just killed the best mid laner in Europe! Wow, that was crazy!" And then he didn't do it for the rest of the split. He just died a lot. Mm-hmm. And then in 2017, 2017, Caps didn't really achieve anything. And then they went to Worlds, and then like he learned a lot, and he says, okay, like I have to tone down my aggression, and I have to work on my jungle more. So 2018 comes around, he builds better synergy with Broxah, and then that's when kind of his development starts to take place, right? 2018 is where like he gets better and better and better, and he starts to better understand his potential. And then kind of at Worlds, when he kind of gets obliterated again by the likes of Rookie and to a degree Scout. He then joins G2, and now I think he's again on this like trajectory where he's in a better environment where he can nurture his talents. But like, I think it's really important to remember that Caps wasn't always the best mid laner, and like Fnatic had this transitional period where they needed to turn him from what he was into what he eventually became. And I think like Nemesis is going through the same stages, in the same way that Febiven went through the same stages. And like, you can have whatever opinions you want about Fnatic, but I do think that they have had this tendency to develop pretty talented mid laners. And I think that Nemesis, based on what I've seen only on week 1 though, is that he's on the right trajectory. And like, I think that he has good potential moving forward. Now, is that enough suddenly for them to start winning the split? I think is obviously debatable. But I think props needs to be given to Fnatic and how they are able to adapt and slowly develop this mid lane talent into eventually becoming one of Europe's best.
Problem with that is though, here's the thing, right? If I put a gun to your head now and I say, if you're wrong on whatever your prediction is now, you know, we're going to go back in time and I shoot you now, right? And you have to pick, does Nemesis become a superstar mid, like an Expeke, a Caps, like, you know, like a guy who can lead the entire region? Or does he just become just a good player? I would personally go to the latter one. Like, I wouldn't put all my money in on Nemesis yet. Like, I haven't seen enough.
That's very, very fair. I heard a lot of hype coming into the last split, and then he didn't live up to that hype at all. But also, like, as a player, he's not the Caps kind of player. He's not the Perkz kind of player. But like, Perkz in his first game locks in Ari and gets like 7 solo kills, right? And Caps solo kills Perkz in his first game. Like, that's not who Nemesis is as a player. If he eventually becomes that, then maybe. But I feel like also there's like control players where they're like very smart about the game, seem to be less acknowledged as a mid laner these days than the Caps is. And I mean, like, I don't want to go too much into this.
That deserves to exist, of course.
I wonder, like, then, like, Faker's never really been known for like solo killing people in lane, right? But everyone considers him to be one of the best mid laners in the world. So like, at what point do you consider that? Where do you have that debate? I don't know. But you're right. Anyway, I went off topic. I would not put my money on that Nemesis suddenly becomes that superstar player. I'm fine if I'm proven wrong, but I agree with you that if we had gone back in time and I had to make that bet, I wouldn't have made that bet.
Because the issue I have with Nemesis is he's another player where you can't just look at the player in isolation. Like, where did his hype come from? Playing in a team with fucking Selfmade. And if you look at the way Selfmade plays, that is not the way Broxah plays League of Legends. So the idea, they're actually opposite players. Like, Selfmade his name is applicable. He's a self-directed player. He's going to make the players. He probably, I'm sure, tells the lane, like, when I'm going to come in, etc. Broxah had the opposite relationship. So as a result, yet either both people have to adapt or it won't work. You know, there's not every scenario works. Players aren't always complementary. Also, doesn't mean you're a bad team. Sometimes you just have an okay link between these players and somewhere else on the map is really great. So that's the area for me with Fnatic. It's like the pieces are there, but they haven't all come together, in my opinion. What do you think, Loco? Are you riding the Fnatic train? Are they going to challenge G2 this split?
No, I think it's G2 OG. I actually think I'm not as hyped about Fnatic, and I agree with you where it's G2 first, OG second. It's only been 1 week, but we'll have to see. But I am pretty high on OG.
Sure. Right, what about, who's a good team? What about the Misfits team then? Because obviously they were probably the team that in context most underperformed last split.
Yeah.
Because obviously they didn't even make the playoffs. I mean, I always said that the weirdest thing about this team was people did the classic move where when the team of like a super team fails, they start picking out like, oh, this player was bad, this player was bad. But one of the things I found so bizarre was I can't believe how much hate went to the two solo laners. Like I saw Veteran make a comment like this on Twitter. It's bizarre the people whose logic was they looked at the spring split and they were like, this Featherman guy's just fucking trash then. I'm like, are you just high on Reddit narratives or something? What are you talking about? Like, he's still a pretty good player. I looked at other members of the team and thought they played badly, and obviously thought as a team they were just abjectly so poor in terms of the pieces fitting together that you're not even going to get some of those players looking good. If everyone on a team almost can't play with each other, everyone's going to look shit. Like, it's going to be really hard for someone to look good at all. Where do you come down on this one, Vedius? Because obviously coming into the split, they are a team where they made their own moves, where they tried to claim we have a 10-man roster and anyone could be the starter. Now, I will just say as a quick aside, to be a very short rant, stop lying, please. Like, here's a reasonable statement. We are considering using perhaps any of our subs, and we will be trying them out and giving them scrim time. And if they earn a spot in the starting team, they may indeed start. It's an absolute lie, an absolute rank lie for anyone in LEC or LCS right now to claim that they have a 10-man roster, because that implies any player could be the starter, and that is just an absolute lie. Like, there's no world in which they really thought that their mid and top would be the academy tops for the whole split. That's never even a chance of that. They were definitely going to try Soaz and Featherburn. They're going to maybe test one of the others. Like, there's no universe where you have a real 10-man. That's just to a side, because I get sick of people saying that over and over again. Because, for example, the best example ever was when literally Reginald and fucking Steve Arnasek gaslit everyone that they had a 10-man roster. Go back and look at how many fucking players actually got into the LCS in those 10-man rosters. Oh, the same 5 players again, was it? What a surprise that is. So anyway, just one of those things on the side where I'm just sick of people lying. But anyway, Vedius, what do you think of Summer Split Misfits?
Summer Split Misfits. So,
by the way, a kind
yes.
of an unfortunate name at this point in time, isn't it? Misfits. Like.
So, there's a few things to unpack. First thing, I agree with you in the sense that it was not purely the solo lane's fault last split. I think the max stall was a really big issue for that team. But the one thing I will say is I think like Featherburn as a player is not your Caps-like player, right? Like if we just for argument's sake say that you have Capses of the world and you have Nuke Ducks of the world, right? Where Caps tries to win his lane through aggression, trading, trying to force you out, roaming, versus Nuke Duck, who's a lot more about control. He's a lot more about farm. Like every time you try to go for a last hit, he's going to punish you for it. And like you have these very small differences, and they can both carry in their own ways, but there's these slight differences. I would argue that Featherburn is a little bit more on the Nuke Duck side. Right?
Yeah,
and the problem is I think many fans remember Featherburn as the dude that would lock in Zed and solo killed Faker, right?
He never really was that player. Like that was just those few highlight players.
I don't think he's really been that player for a while. And I think what Misfits tried to do is they tried to put him in that style and then they tried to play through it. But I don't think that was ever how they were going to find success, which is why I think Featherburn looked worse than arguably he was, because I don't think that they properly enabled him in the style that suits him the best. And this was kind of my issue with Misfits coming into spring, which was that you have 5 very talented players that I think have very different ideas on how to play the game. You have 2 veterans in what were Featherburn and Soaz. You had 2 young players in Maxlaw and Hansama, and then you had the import in Gorilla, who's been ingrained in an LCK mentality, right? So you've got like all these different ways of how to play the game, and you needed someone to help kind of unify and agree on how the game should be played, which is why I like the coaching changes that they've made in the hopes that Moose comes in and he says, all right, this is how we're playing the game now. You all agree or I bench you because we have a 10-man roster. But what I think this team has always needed was ultimately alignment. And I think that if they could find alignment, then they'd be a lot more comfortable in how they play. And if they can find comfort in their play style, then they're more likely to succeed. So what I've seen so far is a little bit more alignment. I do think Featherburn had a pretty bad week 1 in the sense that I think he was solo killed once. Like
the rogue game.
Yeah, like he's made definitely a couple of questionable plays in mid lane, which I wasn't too impressed with. But aside from that, I think that the team overall has shown that they do seem a little bit more aligned in their approach to the game. There were, of course, still issues. Their Baron is still a problem, as we saw in the series against in the game versus Fnatic. And I think that they're still a little reliant on their bot lane. But I do feel that the team overall is a little bit more united and aligned in how they want to approach the game. If this continues, then I think that there is definite growth. But I question what their ceiling necessarily is. I don't know how much they can succeed in this environment when, sure, I'm not saying Febiven and Soaz can't carry, but this is Caps and Wonders meta, right? And you have to think that your players need to be able to play their style. You don't have to necessarily do what Caps and Wonder does, but you need to be able to play that high aggressive style, the roaming style, the working with your junglets builder. And I can't see Febiven and Soaz thriving in that meta. So that's where my biggest concern around Misfits comes in. I don't know how they're going to handle that kind of fast-paced aggression. And yeah, I think that they're still going to have to rely on their bot lane to find a lot of wins. So that's kind of where my thoughts are on Misfits.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually also an area where I feel like they did overlook something when they were making this particular roster. Because one thing people have pointed out, I think it goes along with the Maxlaw issue, is this does look like a team that is lost in terms of a clear shot calling voice, or someone who knows at all points in the game what we want to do now. How do we win this game? How do we close this game? How do we get back in this game? They don't seem to have that. They seem to have a lot of people. I would actually describe this team as it's not that I think they have a bunch of stupid players. Okay, so this is one of the reasons why I always got tilted by fucking Kelsey and Veteran explaining to me for the 7 millionth time, but Thorin, stop saying they are shot callers. There is no such thing as a shot caller. All 5 players do it. It's well, here's 5 players, right? And you presumably don't think they're all morons, but why can none of them make a shot call? Because the point is, right, in Counter-Strike, we have someone called the in-game leader. In theory, he makes all the shot calls, but that was never the way most teams ran anyway. Most teams have a central shot caller who makes the big decision, and then they would have a secondary caller, maybe on Counter-Strike, he plays on a different part of the map and he can make a call of his own, or maybe he just tries to be the extra eyes and ears, he says to the in-game leader, oh, have you thought about doing this? Maybe I've noticed this opening, and he can be the guy. The idea is, though, he just contributes an idea. I would guess if I looked at this team that people like Soaz, Maxlaw, Gorilla are probably best in that role. They're a guy who can contribute an idea, or they can make a smaller call. But where's the overall guy who know, the Mithy type guy who would know, now we need to go and do this objective. Oh, we can pull back at this point in time. We're going to be safe for a few minutes. That's what they look like they lack in this team to me, aside from the little synergies that at the moment haven't been present. So I would say one of the things I think they fucked up in building this team was, I don't think they understood who Gorilla is as a player. Gorilla's entire career in League of Legends is not playing through the bot lane. Every team he's been on is about having a carry top laner and allowing the game state to get to a point where the carry top laner can have the resources and win the game. He played with that guy Zephyr back in the day, Najin Shield, obviously played forever with Prey. Now you put him with Hans Sama, someone who in theory, this used to be one of the main lanes Misfits played through. This is a player that they've committed to for many years and they think is a star player. I personally think he's a bit overrated, but whatever, that's a side discussion. So this team doesn't really make sense on paper. As you mentioned, yeah, in theory, Febiven and Soaz definitely can carry the game, but it's not really what they by default are known to do. As they're not going to do every game. That's not the way they played their careers, really. So I think they were something was a bit off with how they put the players together. These are players where if someone presented a baseball card collection, was I got these 5, I'd be hey, you did pretty well. There's some good players there. If they were no, it's a real team that's going to play in the LEC, I'd be all right then. Well, we'll see how that goes. I have to say, when I actually hyped this team, a lot of it was just hope. I hoped that, for example, I saw as would want to lead a team. He would want to have a chance to, have all of his say after what he'd gone through in Fnatic. I hoped, for example, that Gorilla would come with fresh ideas, change his mentality. But I also feel that's another aspect is a problem with this team is it's a totally new team. The core was only Hans Sama and Maxlaw. That's it. So you don't really have anything existing from before in terms of playing style you can take over, or something works. You were starting from scratch with everything. And that is tough no matter who you are. That's the reason why making super teams is really, really hard. It's because it's one thing to take a good team and add a really good player. You can do that. But if you're having to start from scratch with everyone, that's fucking hard. That is really hard to do, in my opinion.
Which is why we now have to put our faith in the Moose to bring them all together.
Do you guys
unite them?
Do you guys think Kirei or Leader sees any playing time? Because I heard so much hypey things about Leader, and we talked about how Febiven is more
here's
of
the thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. In line with what Vedius said, logically, if they want to play through solo laners, I'd give him a shot at least, especially
I would as well.
Especially if you've practiced a few scrims and he's got like the 2 champions that he'll carry on if you get, especially because the key thing is he does have the mindset to carry. Like that guy thinks he can take, like we had him on the East United show, right? A veteran was trying to convince him, like, you don't have to be a player who just plays a couple of things and, has to use those and brute forces them. You can also learn all the other things and be a superstar player. And he was basically just saying like, but I don't need to. I'll just win on those. It's like, on the one hand, you don't want to hear that if you're a coach, but I tell you what, if you're a fucking fan, you do want to hear that. That means when he locks that shit in, he's going balls deep, isn't he? It's exciting at very least, isn't it? Like in a way, it's good and bad.
I very much believe that leader at least should be given a shot, because I think a max law leader could work. And I think that the meta better suits leader. So I think that if you had a solo laner that would get the resources funneled into him, then he could translate those resources to the sidelines, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what I just want to see how he does. I think rookies have also a great history on the LEC. But yeah, like, I think it would be a worthwhile thing to do. But the thing is, they're 1-1 right now, so clearly they don't feel the need to. But I agree with you, Thorin, like kind of tying in with the 10-man roster thing. I get a little frustrated too when teams say, hey, we have 10 players. And I'm like, well, I've only seen 5 of them. Could we at least see 6 or 7? Like, it's the regular season. If you're going to use them, use them. I don't know if it's play next week, but if it's XL, throw him in. Why not? See how he does. Like, what do you lose? Like, you gain a lot. Like, if you drop a game, is it the end of the world? Probably not. Like, I don't know. So, but I'm not a coach, so I don't know the inner workings. So who am I to say anything?
Plus, then if the right game comes along, they put leader in. If Everton can do a tweet, sucks getting benched. Sad eyes emoji. I'll just leave that out there. Just don't anyone touch it. That one's nuclear. Do not touch it. Right, okay, there we go. Now we've established that. See, I've got to keep everyone safe. At the same time, I've got to bring the edge, but I've got to keep all my brethren safe, Like what I used to say on Someone in Insight is the joke would be if I actually fucked with someone and said, like, come and join us, I would say, come into the minefield. It's lovely and warm in here. Like, I'm safe where I'm stood at the moment, but I'd be careful as you walk towards me. Like, some shit I buried there years ago that can still go off. So, okay, right, what about this then? So, Loco, give us your thoughts on Misfits going forwards then. Because here's the thing, right, Loco? I will absolutely hold you accountable here. You literally are the person who facilitated Gorilla being on this team.
Wait, I didn't
know.
know.
You always, listen, definitely tried to imply that on all those early episodes. Everyone can go and check right now. It's all on the line. Fact checkers. I'm like Hillary Clinton now. Fact checkers, go find out all the shit you're talking. But here's the thing. I notice you are very reticent to fucking call him out. You're very reticent to call him out as a player.
Okay, let's get things clear. Misfits wanted Gorilla, and I made it happen for Misfits. That's what I did. I didn't tell them, hey, you guys should go out and get Gorilla. They wanted Gorilla, and they needed help with it, so I made sure they could get Gorilla. So, as you said, like, Gorilla hasn't been the greatest fit on Misfits, and also Misfits has had an identity crisis, so it does look very bad on Gorilla. I think, and also, one thing that I'm feeling more and more so, I felt this when I was watching SK and a little bit of when I watched Misfits. You doesn't need Korean imports, and you can get by without using Korean imports. So I think it was good on Misfits to import Gorilla when they thought they were a championship roster and they thought they were going to be contending. But with the situation they're at and the kind of reality of it, they could have done without Gorilla. Do I still think they can be good with this permutation? 100% yes, especially if Febibin can step up more, or if they use leader, if they can play more towards solo lanes, then I do think this can be a really good team. As we talked about, Soaz can be a carry player if he wants to, so can Febibin, and maybe if Febibin can't, leader can. If they can find that identity, I think Gorilla will fit in well. It's just idea of what Misfits had as a team and how Gorilla was going to fit in is very different from reality of the situation with Misfits.
Like Vedius, when he says there, like, EU doesn't really need the imports, like, the Gorilla one's an obvious one. Because I know, listen, on paper, his name's an amazing name. Like, he has a fucking insane resume, will basically be a Hall of Fame player if he retires tomorrow. But I have to say, if the way he played in the spring split, if you were Misfits and you could go back in time now and you could sign, by the way, a player who 100% was available, North Scarin, if you could have signed him instead of Gorilla, you'd take that deal tomorrow. Like, that would be a way better pickup.
I don't know, because wouldn't you end up with the same issues? Like, I think one of the
a way more aggressive player.
I mean, that's one of the things that I actually don't know Gorilla super well. A lot of what I know about Gorilla comes from Papa Smithy, and I think one of the advantages that Gorilla has, which many Korean imports don't, is that his base English is already very good, right? And like I've heard that while communication is mixed, that bot lane seems to like be very happy playing together, and they seem to have the right mentality. But
All right.
I don't know if I could justify like. I think the thing is with bot lanes is right now, I think in terms of the support pool, we have Mickey, we have Hylissang, and then like Mithy is a little inconsistent, but sure, I'll throw Mithy definitely in the top 3. And then like
Dreams
is like all right, I guess. Like I actually don't think Europe is that stacked for support talent.
Yeah, after top 3 it gets really weird. Dreams, Ignar, Gorilla.
Yeah, and I mean, like, even Ignar, right? Like, sure, people like to remember him on his Thresh, but I still think, like, he arguably still has the same issues that he had in the past, where his champion pool on supports is very limited.
Very limited, yeah.
He's very adamant on what he likes to play. So I think, like, when it comes to the Gorilla discussion, I actually don't have an issue with bringing him in. But the thing that you said that resonates the most with me is that whenever I remember Prey and Gorilla, which was the duo that I remember most in terms of Gorilla's whole career, was that I went to an international event, and the first thing Papa Smithy tells me is they are amazing at tanking ganks. And I'm like, what the hell does tanking ganks mean? And then like I watched this VOD, and he was like, it was gank after gank after gank after gank, and this bot lane would not die, right? And it was just like, they're self-sufficient, right? They're a bot lane that just survives by themselves. You give them no resources, and somehow they come out ahead with more gold than their opposition, right? And like, I think he's playing for so long in that environment that now he gets all these resources. Like, it's a very different approach to playing the game. And like, it just kind of all ties back into the original discussion point, which is like, I don't think they all agree on how they should play the game. And so like my opinion on whether Gorilla, like, was there a better option there or not is I don't really know, because I don't know if anyone else in Europe right now could offer more than what Gorilla does, but I also don't think people are going to offer much less than what he does either. So like, I don't think it's necessarily a bad pickup, and I can only hope that he kind of gets better, or that Misfits change their approach to how they play the game, or like, yeah, I don't look at Gorilla and think that is one of the core issues that this roster had.
All right, what do you think about the Splyce team then? Because I have to say, Splyce was the team where the joke I always used to make on this show is that, like, I mean, I was only doing it as banter, but I used to imply, like, if you're one of those people who watches LCS and you want to talk shit, like, be aware, like, Splyce basically is the LCS, and this is what happens in LEC. Like, you know, they could be good if they could get to a late game team fight and they won it, great. If they couldn't, then they didn't win the game. Like, you know, they weren't exactly a team that had a great mid game, as you saw. Like, they had a lot of issues with it. So coming into this split, you can obviously, we see some of the team fight comps do still get drafted, but it does seem like they're just in a meta that's going to be hard to survive it. What do you think, Vedius?
I was very impressed with what I saw with Splyce. I think they got unlucky drafting G2 in the first day. But day 2, like throughout the cast, I was like, all right, they have this, they need to do this, they need to do this. And like, they seem to follow each step and everything. And I think they ended the game in like 27 minutes. And I think Humanoid showcased a lot of growth. I was very happy with what we're seeing from him. Vizachachi seems like the same player that he always is. A little inconsistent, but like his potential on the champions that he's known for and good at is extremely high. And I have nothing but faith and belief in Xerxes. I think this guy genuinely has the potential to be like the best jungler in Europe.
Wow.
I think that if he was on like a G2 or an Origen, you'd see like what he was really capable of. But I think that he is a really, really solid jungler. I think his early game is exceptionally good. And I think last split he was put in a position where like he was relied on to be a leader in a very young team when he's pretty inexperienced himself, right? So he was trying to carry what was the early game, and then like to transition from like being a carry to then being a leader and controlling everything, I think was difficult for the team that they were in. But now that they've grown more, I think this team has a lot of potential. And I think that a lot of it comes off the back of Xerxes. I think he's a very talented jungler.
Thoughts, Loco?
For me, Splyce was, I watched them so little last week because they were incredibly boring. And then the 2 games I watched them, they were also just solid and good. Like where EU has so much exciting teams and exciting personalities, like it's really hard for Splyce to stand out. And you can stand out maybe with the level of your gameplay. I think their level of gameplay is on the higher end, but the way they play is boring. And the player I understand the least, and I was really shocked that he was rated highly in the All-Pro in spring and also rated highly by Dracos and Frost, is Kabe. I really don't understand like what is so special about Kabe and why the EU analysts like rave about him so much.
Guess what? He's the new fucking Reckless, isn't he? As long as his champion's the one that got the kill, he must have carried the game, right? He's literally playing Sivir and he's a fucking AD carry. What do you expect?
Whoa.
Come on, homie. Come at me then.
So the thing about Kabe, right, is he had... he was in a situation last split where when their mid game was falling, Kabe would step up. So when the rest of the team was falling apart, he was the guy that was actually turning those games around, right? So like, I will get behind the idea that his laning phase was definitely not his strongest suit, right? But not only did he expand his champion pool throughout the split, I think having the largest champion pool, I think only behind Perkz for 80 carries last split, he also had like insane carry performances where he even earned the respect of a lot of 80 carries last split who praised him very highly. So I think when on that team, when there were a lot of pieces that didn't fit together, the fact that he stepped up pretty dramatically to bring them to a 4th place finish deserves him a lot of praise. Were my expectations that coming into the split, he would suddenly be this high impact, hyper carry, 80 carry? I don't necessarily know. I'm not entirely bought into that, especially when I think the meta right now is very like mid-top focused or mid-jung focused rather than bot lane focused. But I think that Kabe is a very good player. I think that he does deserve to be rated highly. I think that people are remembering a lot of legacy stuff rather than actually recent stuff. And his recent performances were very, very good. So I think that it is warranted that you can definitely rate him highly as an AD carry.
I mean, he basically had the dream fucking team to have all those performances on, though. Like, if you had a different... If your team was playing differently, you wouldn't even be in the position to get half those kills he was getting. Like, on this team, I think the saddest thing about Splyce for me is, like, I think this is also a team that has some players that, like, I mean, they have no choice. They're just in this team now. They have to play the style of the team. Like, if you were saying Xerxes, I would say Humanoid's the player. Like, I think if Humanoid was, put it this way, if Humanoid was on like Vitality, this guy would be thought of as a fucking superstar in this league, in my opinion. Like, he could fucking carry loads of games if he was given the resources and they were playing super hard around him. Like, in this team, you don't have as many choice to do that. Like, you're not going to happen from mid in that scenario. I agree. I think Xerxes is good. I have some questions about his champion pool a little bit, maybe, but certainly looks like a much, much better player in this Splyce than the old Splyce, where he was way, way more one-dimensional. I think the top side of the map generally is pretty good. I just think, unfortunately, this is the weird thing about Vizichachi as a player, is obviously in the days when it was mainly just tanks and bruises in the top lane, he had a great rep as being a potential carry top lane because he played on those teams, him and PoE, and, that was just the only lanes you could play through. But I have to say, it's kind of a bit underwhelming this year, because I would think, right, exactly. This is your time, Vizichachi. You can go ham, mate. We can go fuck it. And then you look, he still plays the same champions. He still plays the same style. He's still like, it's almost like he goes out of his way to say, it's like I remember Odo Amn in the past had this problem. It's like they go out of their way to be like, I can just play low econ if you want. It's like, no, we can give you the carries now, mate. It's no problem. They're like, no, I don't want to be a bother, just give the carry. It's like, no, that's not the mayor anymore. Like, we're not 3 years ago, guys. Like, like, I think this team, if they wanted to, could play a very different style. But for whatever reason, they've settled into this. I don't know if it's a makeshift approach or whatever. It works to some degree. It's just that I can't see in this world how they can be the best team. Like, it's kind of tough, even though they have pretty good players across the board. Like, I don't think they have bad players in any position.
Give me 10 seconds. I'll be right back.
All right, then. Right. What do you think anyway, Vedius?
I agree. I think we're in a weird situation where Europe has never had an international champion before, so we now have a benchmark. So, like, my perspective is kind of shifting, and I don't know if it's good or bad, but like, I see how Splyce compared to G2, and I sit there and I'm like, well, on an individual basis, I just don't think that you can match the caliber of players that they have. And that's not to say that Splyce have bad players. It's just G2 have really, really good ones. So then, like, you kind of look at this Splyce roster and you're kind of like, well, like, what are their hopes? What are their, like, goals and achievements for the split?
What's a realistic expectation? Basically?
Yeah, like, it's it's really challenging.
We should analyze these teams from now on. I agree with you, by the way. I've been doing the same thing in NA, which is what I do when I look at the NA teams is, since I know behind the scenes, I mean, now people actually know because Travis made that video, but I already knew that some of the teams were operating at a way lower payroll than the other ones. That's why I used to judge some of them and give them mad props, and people would probably think like, well, you're about the 5th best team. It's like, yeah, but look who they're working with, you know. So I think the same thing about the Splyce team. Like, when you consider how many of their players, they were literally getting the cast-offs. Like, they weren't getting the first choice of most of these players. So the idea that they put together like a pretty solid team that can potentially be like a 4th best team, that's actually legit in context.
I'm very curious as to how they, like, if we go into the assumption, right, that it's G2 versus Origen as like clear top 2, right? And then like, sure, I'm of the opinion that Fnatic could challenge 2, but if for now we just say that Fnatic is 3, my debate is how big is the gap between Splyce and Fnatic, right? Because I think like finishing top 3 and ultimately making it to Worlds is what many European fans want, or like many European teams, I would argue, rather than fans. That's the thing for me what I wonder, because when you like compare bot lanes, I think they're very similar. You have a pretty aggressive support with an AD carry that's most well known for their late game scaling. Reckless clearly has a stronger laning phase than Colby, but very similar. You now have 2 mid lane rookies that seem to have a very promising start to the split. You have 2 junglers that are known for their aggression, and you have 2 top laners that are a little inconsistent, a little unreliable, but definitely have those carry moments in them. So I think like when you look at Splyce and you look at Fnatic, they're actually very similar in how they approach the game and like what they're bringing to the table so far. So I would think that right now my highest expectations for Splyce would be, let's see if they can overcome Fnatic, let's see if they can pass that benchmark, and then I'll put you into the conversation of whether you can challenge the Origins or not, and slowly make your way up. But I definitely agree with you with like the roster that they have. Like, you don't sit there and looking like, oh, that's star-studded, that's amazing, that's an amazing roster. The fact that they do challenge these top teams and they do bring, in my opinion, pretty competitive games, and as Loco says, like the quality of their League of Legends may be a little bit boring, but it's definitely on the higher end. I think like a lot of props needs to go to Splyce, that they've achieved a lot with the tools that they've been given, and I'm excited to see what growth they can make now with this team.
Vedius, at the current trajectory, do you think they'll end 4th? Because I think teams like Schalke, teams like Misfits, we have to take a second look at, because they bombed Spring, where I feel like they have the pieces to be challenging for 4th, but they bombed Spring and now they're fixing. So I'm not even sure if Splyce is going to end 4th.
Well, based on what I've seen right now, like Splyce seem to have a clearer fundamentals of how to play the game. They seem to be a lot more reliable and consistent in how they execute. But of course, it's only based off of 2 games, right? But I seem to have a little bit more faith in Splyce versus like Schalke, who right now have like, they should have lost their game versus XL, and the reason why they won was because Hishon overstepped and got hit by a cocoon. And then they should have won a game, which they ended up throwing because they didn't ward their flanks and they got hit by a Sejuani ultimate and they lost the game. And then the upset also had a pretty weird Vayne positioning near Baron and so on and so forth. So like, I can't say I have a lot of faith in Schalke right now. I still think that they're pretty inconsistent, even though they make the argument that Trick has added a lot of value in terms of structure and coordination. Like, so far, I haven't really seen that much more coordination than what we've seen in the past. And Misfits, I still have my doubts around their ability to play through their solo laners. So that's why I'm a little bit more right now on the Splyce hype train over those 2.
What about SK Gaming then? Because this is a team where obviously the big news was they changed out the top laner. They brought in Sakura, who performed very well on the SK. I think it was SK Prime is what they're called, was the academy team that finished second at the EU Masters overall. So, I mean, that's one where, like, I mean, we don't really debate that move much. It's a pretty clear upgrade. And obviously, I think Sakura is someone people want to see in the LEC. Like, that was a team where before, realistically, it was like, first of all, it's all about self-made. He just goes fucking ham. Then, like, Pyrion probably underratedly good. Like, actually had some pretty nice performances. The bot lane came on as the split went on, kind of got better and better towards the end. And now I actually look at SK Gaming's team. Like, listen, again, in context, no, obviously they're not going to win the LEC. But actually, first of all, I bet they're going to cause a lot of upsets. Like, I could see this team stealing some games from a lot of squads. And then actually, overall, they now actually have like a pretty decent team across the map. Like, this is not a bad. This isn't one of the like rogue Excel rosters that everyone was laughing at from the spring split. This roster looks all right to me.
Yeah, I was really excited with the addition of Sakura because I felt like it now gave SK another more reliable lane playthrough. And one of the things we said as commentators last split was like the level 4 gank from Selfmade, where at level 4 he would gank Warlib almost every game, and he would play Poppy. He played like I can't even remember. I just remember that one Poppy game. Kept ganking that lane, and I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you so determined to get this Poppy ahead? And like I was like, okay, well, if he does that with Sakura, who's playing things like Renekton and Nico and carry top laners, then sure, this is great, this is perfect. And on paper that should definitely be an upgrade, but so far I feel like we're just not seeing the same Selfmade that we saw from last split. Maybe it's just a slow start, maybe he's still figuring out how to work out with Sakura, but I felt like his first game he was pretty much invisible, and in his second game he definitely had some very clutch Sejuani ults, and his early game was a little bit more impactful. But I'm still looking at this Selfmade Sakura duo to kind of really kick off before I can start like believing in it. But I definitely agree with you, a lot of potential for upsets and hype with this team. I just don't think consistency is the thing we're likely going to see from SK.
Thoughts on SK Loco?
Kind of same about Misfits. Like this is a team where I'm like, man, they actually don't need imports. But to talk about overall as a team,
like, by the way, Loco, just let's just take that for a second then, because obviously, like, that is the most egregious one, isn't it? Like, here's the funny thing: I'm not even going to hit on Pyrion. I actually think if you look at all the regions he's played in now, you know what? He's not a bad player. Like, he's been in a lot of tough spots and a lot of teams that weren't good that he was good drafted into. And he's actually performed pretty well. And as far as I can tell, if you look at all the regions he's played in, he must have a pretty self-sufficient mindset where he doesn't need like massive amounts of attention and everything being called around him. He's actually you can plug and play the guy pretty well. The problem is though, in a world in which, yeah, we could go into this last EU Masters and pick out like 3 or 4 nice prospects, or in terms of people like Leader and Larson, people are probably ready now to play in the LEC. The idea that like Pyrion is playing in LEC is a bit weird. Like, I know obviously it's because of the circumstances of who was signed when, and the fact that some of these players only just came up in the spring and they're on academy teams of teams who probably don't want to sell them to a rival LEC team. There's a lot of business reasons those players aren't, but like, it's rare that you get a time where you can look at the top league in a region and say, actually, there's like 3 or 4 names that probably should be starting in that league who aren't even there. They're waiting for their chance, while, yeah, you have a player like Pyrion where it's kind of like, why is he in the LEC? That's a bit weird.
I don't think Pyrion's bad at all. It's just LEC has such a wealth of mid lane talent. It's, why are you using a Korean import when you have young EU mid laners that are going to be cheaper, that are going to have more long-term potential, and that are just going to be better culturally fit with your team? Like, why are you using Korean mids? And this is someone that, as a Korean, and I love seeing Korean imports, like, I'm a Korean import supporter, and I'm like, why the fuck are you using Korean import? To talk a little bit more about SK and what kind of team they are, this team actually has pretty bad macro, because when you think European teams, I think side lane. I think them running 1-3-1. I think them having strong split pushers. This team NA so much. Like, they're just constantly looking for fights mid lane, like 4-on-4, 5-on-5. It's really weird to me where, yeah, this is the one team that's kind of North American.
You're just gonna leave that there, are you, Vedius?
Yeah, I like that. Let's sum up. I think that's great. I think that's a great summary of SK. I think that they've like shown no awareness on how to like understand League more. They're just like, hey, we're 5 really good League of Legends players. Why don't we just outplay them? And then when they do outplay them and they snowball, they look great. When they don't, they don't. But they're also like, they're a little how do I say this? They're a little unpredictable.
Sure.
That's a nice word. And I think like the best case is like when you look at that game versus Schalke, when, you know, they're playing against a full Baroned up team, the enemy has like X amount of gold ahead. Like, why would this team engage on us? Well, why not? We're going to lose otherwise. And then they actually do it, right? I don't think that they're a team that likes to lose slowly or gracefully and wait for that perfect opportunity. They'll just try it. And sometimes that looks really bad because you're sitting there like, why are they doing this? And you know, they're just like, well, we were going to lose anyway. We thought we would just make this play. And if it worked, then yay, we get all these shutdowns and suddenly we're like at least slightly back in the game. But if it doesn't, well, then we look like idiots. But like that to me feels very much what this team is. And yeah, I just think that if they can get good early game leads and they stand a good shot, but a lot of that again falls on Selfmade. And again, like I agree, I think they have a lot of they have a lot of decent players. I think they can do a lot with the talent that they have, but they definitely don't rely on their understanding of League to carry games. It's very much on their individual skill and like playmaking ability that I think helps them win games.
By the way, as an aside, that's like a more abstract meta point I want to make about League of Legends for people who are watching now, is we also can't watch the game as though it was the game 4 years ago and it was the Korean vision style, etc. Like, one of the areas you can't blame teams for in the same way is, like Vedius was saying there, say you're in a scenario where you're losing the game and even the key lanes you have wanted to have a chance to play through are not getting the kills. You can't actually just sit back and go, yeah, I don't like the look of that fight, actually. I'm just moving back. This one, still not quite my fight. Gonna play. Teams are accelerating the game now. Like, if they're already ahead and you just keep like refusing to take like what might be like a 37% chance for you to win a skirmish, like that 37% might be way better than the 20% that's coming down the line if you do nothing and you keep giving them all the advantages, give them all of the map to play with. Like, at this point in time, I think also sometimes you should actually do what SK does in that sense. You actually should just be willing to just go in and try and turn the game around.
But
they're not calculated. They're not calculated.
The great thing about it is the Origen G2 game is an example of calculated aggression, right? Where G2 would make these plays where they would try to get themselves ahead, and then Origen would kind of look for those moments where, like, okay, this is a bit of a gamble. This is a bit of a risk. If this goes wrong, but like they'll go for it anyway, and they'll try and make those plays. And that's actually what kept the game so even for such a long time, and why it almost looks so chaotic. But it's one of those situations where you kind of have to throw yourself into the chaos and be like, well, I have to fight them here, because if I don't, they're going to snowball even harder. So yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's a great way to play League, and I'm not a fan of just sitting there watching you lose everything, because I mean the average game time in Europe right now is like 28 minutes.
Yes.
So there's no time to just sit there and wait for the optimal play, because it's probably not going to come.
Because, like, I mean, the distinction to make, just to add on and kind of finish that point, is that was a legitimate style in the past. Like, actually, sometimes I got frustrated with teams who were the opposite, where it was like, you know, look at like if you've got a champion scaling in another lane, it's like, we're fine. You don't have to gamble the whole game now. Like, you can give up a small thing now, as long as this guy gets his farm, and as long as this character, say the AD carry, gets another item. Right now, we'll be in a position where our fight, we can have a team fight competitor. At the moment, like, there's not as many situations like that where you can just chill back. That's the reason why, for me, everyone is terrorized by G2. It's because at the moment, they are, in that sense, reminiscent of IG. It's like when they start rolling, you basically have to just join in. Like, you don't really have a choice to just say, I don't want to play this game. It's like that's the game at the moment, unfortunately, and these are the most effective teams. So you are, in some ways, you have to just go toe-to-toe with them in that respect. Like, you can't, I don't really know what up, like, I haven't seen the team yet that can play a very slow controlled style and stop G2 taking over the game. Like, you can definitely, G2 can lose games when they overreach and when they try to go for extra kills and they greed. That happens, sure. And I saw at MSI, sometimes they lost if they got behind at the very beginning of the game too much.
Yeah,
but who the fuck in Europe is doing that? Exactly. And no one in Europe is doing the second part of that. And so the first part, the idea you're just going to sit back, I don't think anyone can do that at the moment. You don't have to do it against every team, obviously, but against G2, you don't have a choice right now. Let me think. Who haven't we talked about yet?
Schalke and XL. Those are the two.
There's XL, Rogue, and Schalke, the three teams we haven't done. Okay, let's do the Schalke team then, because this is the team, as you've alluded to, Vedius. They brought in Trick, who, for anyone who doesn't know, hasn't had a great time since you last saw him in Europe. Like, when he was on the BBQ Oliver's team, he wasn't particularly good, and the team itself actually was a very, very erratic, not particularly great team. Then he obviously was in Turkey, wasn't exactly setting the world alight over there. And bizarrely, somehow he's now ended up back in Europe. I can only assume, you know, just when he was about to retire from his career, he got that Skype message, Jan, who's this? And he goes, I could put you on a team in Europe if you want. You know, the premier, booking agent in Europe contacted him under his alias that none of you know, and he arranged for him to join a team again. And so the interesting thing about this move for me is this is where we're going to learn who the fuck Abidage is. Because Abidage was in a team where, in theory, you would think, right, he should be one of the better players, right? This is a guy who has a chance. He's a rookie. Everyone's excited to see him play. He has this very, very proactive jungler who's getting all these early game leads. Like, if you want to be a carry player in Europe, here's your chance. Here's your debut. And unfortunately, those two players, Memento and Abidage, they needed to have amazing synergy, and they had fucking no synergy, it looked like at times. And on top of that, Abadage had such a limited champion pool that he could actually win games on. It was ridiculous. And so for me, this now shows this split what it's about, because Trick is a player who his entire career was made playing around Perkz pretty much. Like, this is a guy where when he's in G2, they had an amazing synergy together. That's why my joke is they synergized so well, people accidentally thought Trick was the MVP. Anyway, you see the way I go there. Here's the thing, Vedius, you just let a few of them go, mate. Pick the ones that are the ones worth having a battle for. You gotta let some of this shit go, mate. We can't be taking up all of them. So anyway, what do you think of this team that he's coming into now, Schalke? Because as you said, it hasn't been a great first week.
No. So when we had Upset on PGL, he was talking about how like a player's strength is not always indicative of how they look on like previous teams. So a good player can often look worse if they're on a bad team, and a bad player can look better if they're on a good team, right?
Very timely for him to say that, of course.
Yeah, and one of the things he was saying about Trick was that people think that he's a bad player, but like he is very smart about the game. He has a lot of experience, evidently, and like his mechanics are still up there with some of the best of them. And one of the things that he brings to the Schalke roster is like a little bit more structure and like leadership. And that's not to say that he brings shot calling, but you were talking about like having that voice earlier, that person that goes, this is the thing we're doing. I think that he adds that. So if a lot of people are feeding information, I think he's ultimately the guy that says, okay, I think the best play is to do Baron, or I think best play is like, he ultimately just brings a little bit more solidarity to the team. And I think like his early game is fine. Like Frosk and I had a really long discussion around how I felt like he could have done a lot more in his early game, and she was like, I think he had a great early game. But the thing for me about Trick is that he hasn't really changed a lot of this team for me. Now, it's obviously still very early on in the split, and that team had a lot of issues last split, so bringing in a new player, they probably still have a lot to work through. But Schalke doesn't necessarily feel that much different to me. They don't have a core identity. That they still feel very much like the Upset show. They still feel very much like, hey, if he's in a position to carry, then we're gonna win. But yeah, like I don't know. I feel like I don't have much of an opinion on them because they haven't shown me a huge amount. Like they almost lost to XL, and then they did lose to SK, and like that's worrying. Right? Like when these two are the teams that are arguably towards the bottom half of the split, like Schalke at the beginning of last split was sitting in second place. So yeah, like I haven't really seen that much adaptation. And again, it's only a week for sure. And I'm still going to leave my mind open to the possibility that this team is better than what they were able to showcase in week one. But so far, yeah, I don't really have much of an opinion. They seem just very much similar to what we saw last split.
The game they lost to SK, if Upset played a little bit better in that fight where he just walked up, got Braum ulted, and then got insta-deleted, I think they should have and would have won that game.
And if Hishon just hadn't walked up and eaten that cocoon, then XL should have and could have won that game against
maybe
0-2-3.
Maybe. But I'll say this, like, at least they do have an identity, and we are an Upset team, and we are going to rely on him. It is not the best identity to have in this meta. Like, they played Vayne 2 games in a row. Like, what other team is fucking playing Vayne? Like, they're playing Vayne Braum, Vayne Thresh. Like, they're going out of their way to be this Upset team. But one thing that's really different for me is their mid and jungle is not giant mid-hole of pressure anymore. Like, or not a giant black hole of pressure in mid and jungle. Like, last split, I look at their mid and jungle, and there is literally a black hole that is, like, no pressure, like nothing. Like the mid and jungle gave nothing, and this split, at least in these two games, like Abadage looks better, has better synergy with jungle. Like the jungler isn't doing nothing. Like this is at least something they can build off of. Like I don't think that bot lane identity is going to carry them all the way to like second or even third, but they'll be better than last split. I'll be shocked if this team doesn't make playoffs again. Like Upset is damn good. Odo Omne, good. Like Abadage passable, Trick passable, Ignar passable. Like this is a playoff team.
Wait a minute. How you just described a team that's terrible. Like you just described that. So the bot lane is we have a really good AD carry, right? Mm-hmm. So who are we going to pair him with? Really limited support player who has to basically play like ridiculous engaged champions. Doesn't still have very much.
He loves the support and the AD both like having resource.
Then why don't they have the best bot lane in Europe then?
They don't. I mean, you can still be a good bot lane without being the best bot lane in Europe. It's not black and white.
that's my point. Is what a waste of a bot lane. Like, of all the support players you could have, this is the bot lane you made. Like, on this team, you need to play through the bot lane. Look who you have. Like, but how can you? It's so limited as to what you can do.
I don't
even think it's upset that the one that's limited, he has to play shit that can work with what Ignar can play. There's the fucking limiting factor for you right there. Then you look at the rest of the team. If I'm going to pick 2 players on the top side of the map to work together, it's going to be the fucking mid laner and the jungler, obviously. That's, in theory, at the moment, still the weak connection. Like, Odoamne, as you see, is definitely willing to play carries, but is it even the right team for him to play them in? I don't really know, actually.
No, not really. Not on this team,
Exactly.
not really.
So my point is, like, I agree, they have players who, in isolation, I think, could all be in teams just as good or better, maybe. But, like, together, I don't think it's a very good mix of players, personally. I don't have a lot of faith in this Schalke team.
Wait, their identity is clear towards bot lane. Like, you talked about Ignar having a limited champion pool.
And you've just agreed they don't have the best bot lane, so their identity is play to bot lane where we're not even the best, and then we have a massive hole in mid and jungle. And then you're like, cool, sounds like the playoffs will be fun. Sounds like you'll be fucking playing one round of the playoffs, mate.
Think about TL with Ole. They weren't the best bot lane because Ole was limiting, but Ole Doublelift was a lane you could play towards too because Double was so good. I think Upset is either the best or the second best AD carry.
Yeah, I agree. If you sent them to LCS, maybe they could be a champion, but this is the LEC. There's better teams, you know.
They can be top tier. Oh, wow. Their identity is clear. Wait,
set him up for that one. There we go.
Dorian, Ignar plays shit like Thresh, he likes Blitz, he likes Leona, he likes people coming to his lane. And when people come to his lane and they play towards the bot lane, then you're playing towards Upset and Ignar. Like, they synergize in that regard. The huge problem they had last split was mid and jungle with a black cola pressure. It just sucked everything in and gave nothing. It was just sucking in everything. But now mid and jungle are actual human beings. They have actual human beings for mid and jungle. That's all they needed to be a playoff team, and they have human beings now. I think they'll make playoffs easy. I'll be shocked.
They can make playoffs, but they're not. I don't see anything more than that from this team. Like, the problem is what you described there was the only strength they have.
So this is the thing for me, right? I agree that I may have been a little disingenuous because Loco makes a great point in that the difference between what their mid jungle was to what it is now is like it's night and day, right? There is a very clear difference, right? And you can debate whether you can actually successfully, because in an ideal world, right, when you have a bot lane like this, they're self-sufficient and you can leave them to it, and then you can just play through your mid and top, right? That would be the ideal world, or at the very least you hard play through mid and then your mid gets you advantages that you can then bring to bot, and then you enable upset like as a secondary thing rather than as the primary thing that you do in this game. The thing that I think we haven't seen yet is just the team's successful ability to fully enable Abadage, allow him to be a massive carry, and then run away with the game. I feel like in both games it's been very much around upset. And as you rightly said, I think the Vayne pick is something to do with it. I think if they pick something more like a Sivir or a Zyre or something that was a little bit more like neutral in terms of how it impacts the game, maybe we can see that focus shift. But I will agree that I think that there is very clearly an upgrade in what we saw in mid and jungle compared to what we saw last split, and on paper this should definitely be a playoff team. I think those are fair statements.
Thing is, I'm actually not really like I don't really buy that Abadage is that good a player. I think he's pretty average. In fact, I would say if you look at the talent pool in Europe, I'd say he's probably below average.
Wait,
see, I mean, the problem is coming into the split, there was Caps, there was Nuke Duck, and there was debatably Jizuke, right? And then, like, who do you put fourth? Like, based on
wait a minute. I think Humanoid's way better than Abadage.
Yeah, but like last split, that you can't make the argument. Like, that's my point, right? He's pretty decent. Remember the days when we had like 7 good mid laners?
Sure,
and it was the debate.
Here's the thing, though. The difference is, the distinction I make is that I think Humanoid was already pretty good, as I said, in a team that I don't even think necessarily fit his style the best. Like, I think I think if you swap these two players, they probably make more sense on the opposite teams. Like, Abadage would probably make more sense on Splyce. I think this guy would fucking kill it on Schalke if he had any of those junglers. So, like, that's the problem for me, is like, the problem at the moment in Europe is, like, the team level is what's making people define the player level on mid, for example. Like, I don't think Abadage is a very good player, mate. Look at all the players in the league right now.
Oh, I mean, last split,
at all.
Abadage was horrendous. He died so much, and like, I was impressed that anyone could die a lot on Lissandra.
Like, he really was the player who was only on Lissandra because, like, he would just die all the time.
Like, he had a bad split, right? And there were lots of stats to support it, right? Not just my word, right? There was a lot of evidence. But so far this split, he played Aatrox, and I think he played Rise. Was that it?
Yes.
I can't.
That was the last. They could have won that game, obviously.
I thought his Aatrox was fine, and I thought like his Rise was okay. So like I'm not gonna say anything about Abadaga yet. All I will say for certain is that he is better than he was last split. So I'm with Loco on this one. I'll give them a playoff spot for time being. I don't hate
Wait a minute. How many fucking playoff spots are we giving away here? There's only 6, Vedius. Are you aware of this? Like, so we're going. Right, well, let's just get this out of the way. G2, Origen, Fnatic are all making it. Yes, let's put those out. Put those to one side.
Yeah.
So we've only got 3 spots left. Right?
Yes.
So the 3 spots, you're giving 1 to Schalke, yeah?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Are you giving 1 to Misfits?
I'm giving 1 to Splyce.
Splyce. There's only 1 left, mate, and we've got to go between. Let me see. Who have we
Take
got?
out
Vitality.
No, Vitality's out.
I think Vitality's out. I think Vitality won't get better.
Ooh, oh damn, that's interesting.
So then who's getting the last spot? SK?
It would be Misfits or SK probably, unless Rogue makes a miracle run. What am I talking about? Miracle run? It's been week 1. They're currently like 1-1.
Their start is too horrible to recover from. They went 1-1.
Let's move to that team then. Let's move to Rogue, because obviously this was the team where, unlike the other squads that have now announced, we'll bring up an academy player, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, Rogue, because they were in such a bad spot last year where they were clearly the worst team in the league. I mean, XL gave them a little bit of a run for the money towards the end, but in theory, they were the worst team in the league. They already had begun, obviously, bringing up the players from academy. They saw some positive benefits of that. And for people who don't know, you would have seen more of those players in LEC. But once they knew they couldn't make the playoffs, they thought, well, why don't we now flex and maximize the National League? So they took those players back down again and then did what they could in the National League. Now, unfortunately, in EU Masters, the team actually ended up in a group with, I think, Fnatic and SK, and basically went out like either that or Misfits.
Lions, didn't they?
Oh,
or something like that.
But whatever, they basically didn't make it out of the playoff, the playoff scenario, even though they were actually a favourite for the whole tournament. So that was a bit of a shock. But anyway, you did see, as a result, they announced all these players would be brought up. So yes, Vander will come back up again. Larson at some point, obviously, will be playing the mid lane. He's supposed to be one of the stars of the National League scene. And obviously, you saw already in the past them swap out Profit in the top lane for Finn. And so this is a team where they really do look like they're willing to go all over the roster in terms of changing players in and out. And obviously that meant, for example, probably a guy who, even though in the past he probably has been overrated, a guy who probably got the most hard done by last split, I would say, is probably Sencox. Like, he wasn't as terrible as people made out. I think, unfortunately, the snowball of the problems he had in Misfits last year carried over. And so perhaps people saw the team was the last, and they saw that, some of the subs were good. They thought, fuck this guy. Whereas, like, I will say if you Sencox, I think you could play in the LEC, mate. I think some of these other players, like, for example, everyone who's mad hyped about Nabe Dagi, I'd take Sencox right now if I had the choice over that. That's just I think he'd bring a base level that I know I can take from him and play with different players. But I will say, obviously, I was excited myself. I want to see Larson play in the LEC. I want to see what this team can do. So, like, I look at this team, I still think it's a bit unrealistic to think. I personally don't think they can make the playoffs. Like, I think it's a tough ask to do that. Still a very flawed team, but there's some nice pieces here. And the key thing is, on the one side, the bad part is, except for Vander, all the pieces are basically a question mark because no one knows how they'll do as proper starters and playing full time. But that can also be the upside, obviously. What if literally all of them become good players? Then all of a sudden this team might be like twice as good as it was last split. And that's not even actually that ridiculous a scenario because we're talking about players who are fresh. Like they've got a little bit of experience. Remember, they've had some lad experience. They have played in a team with real coaching from within the same org. So, and in fact, there's another detail you can add. Remember, a unique thing about some of these other teams as well is like they have been willing to clearly scrim their academy teams. So you've actually had real practice already. Right? What do you think, Vedius? Because I don't want it to just be like, when you have the worst teams, you have to like find a reason that they're not shit. Like that's kind of a whack angle. But like, is there anything good about this team? Is there anything that actually promises?
I mean, Larson's definitely good. I think Larson's really good. I don't know what I think about Profit. Like we've seen him in the LEC for a long time, and we've tried to build narratives around him, and then he doesn't do anything. So I'm not convinced by Profit. Their bot lane was talking with Frosk a lot about this, and she was like, typically in the Ultra League, it was like their bot lane that they actually like usually played through, and they were the main carries. And I think that what we saw was that when you shut this bot lane down, this team is actually kind of limited in their options. But maybe that's a bit of an exception because like their bot wasn't shut down; they were removed from the game. That was like a 3 versus 5 with how hard Misfits camped that duo. But I personally think Inspired and Larssen are very, very solid. I think they have a lot of potential. And I'm excited about these 2 players specifically. The rest of the roster I'm not as excited about, but if we're going to see a lot of upsets from Rogue, it'll be from those 2. And like the main reason why like I put them in C tier going into the split, and that was because I felt like a team that's actually played together for a really long time, where they actually have some good core fundamentals in like mid jungle.
Yeah, and there's the other thing. They're obviously bringing some of that synergy up with them. It's not like those are all players having to learn a new team. So
that's kind of what I was kind of buying into. And the fact that they ended their week 1-1, sure, their win was over XL, but if you listen to Mic Check, their jungler was like, wait, why can I hear myself in my own headset? Like, okay, so they've clearly got a lot to learn about being on the stage and like acclimating to this environment. So maybe I give them too much benefit of doubt. Like they should definitely not make playoffs with this roster. They're a little too young for my taste, and given how stacked I think the top end is right now on Europe, I think it'll be difficult for them. But Larssen is definitely a player that I'm going to be keeping my eyes on. I think that he's very, very promising. So.
I actually think as well, Rogue is an example as we go forward in the franchising era of another option you have. So if you're not a team like a G2 Misfits, who in theory can go and buy whichever players you want and try right this moment to have the best team, which is clearly the goal of those squads, another option is go the route Rogue did. Get some like LEC level players, just have a team, and then put your focus on the National League team or the Academy team and try and gather good talents to that team, where obviously those talents haven't been given a spot in the LEC. So you could get some players who next year could be top LEC players, and then you have the chance to either A, feed them into your team like this, or sell those players. Like I guarantee some of these players would fetch a way better price than probably what they initially were when you got them into the Academy
Grow
team.
them and sell them to NA.
It's a good idea. I think some of these teams who are at the bottom, that should be your approach. It's like once you realize your team isn't going to be super legit, develop the talents. Try and get proper players through that way.
Dude, for me, this Rogue team, they're exciting because like, ooh, inspired young jungler that can be good. Ooh, Larssen. And then you go to, ooh, like Vander. I'm like, you go to Prophet. Like this team got so ahead in their game versus Misfit on Rek'Sai. I think he was like 3-0 or 4-0. And then they just watch the Elise die bottom over and over again. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? And then after that, when they get to mid game, they were starting to team fight when their bot lane, the Kai'Sa and Rakan were level 5. Like Kai'Sa and Rakan are not fucking champions without their ultimates. Like what the fuck are you doing? First of all, why are you level 5 10 minutes into the game? Second of all, why are you voluntarily moving up all the way to fucking Rift Herald to take a team fight when you're level 5? Like there's some things that this team does where I'm just like, you guys seem fucking stupid. They have exciting players, hope they can grow, but I agree with you. Like this team is not going to have experience, and this first split for a lot of their players are going to be such a good stepping stone moving on to next year. But yeah, excited for the growth, but not excited for what this team can do.
And I have to say, like, I haven't seen him play very much in the last few years, but like, unless there's been some radical transformation of Woolite, like I was 100% out on that guy a long time ago, because he is the classic example of like, you know, like the whole thing of like, if someone ever says something and they say like a compliment and then they say, but you're supposed to just ignore everything that was before the but, because the idea is they've only said that to make it not sound as bad for when they say the shit after the but, right? So people always say about Woolite, they go, he's a talented player, but he does misposition aggressively sometimes. It's like, he's an AD carry! What the fuck are you talking about? That's like being like, oh yeah, his job is he does walk on a tightrope without a net, but he has fallen a few times. It's like, gonna be dead soon. What are you talking about? Like, that's a terrible career path. Like, what are you doing? So I remain to be convinced on that one. Like, that's the one I don't really understand. I can only assume their logic was the Vander connection. Like, oh, look, we had great synergy when we were in the National League. Because, like, I don't really know why that's a player we're sort of giving, like, the fucking millionth chance in the LEC in that respect, you know. Like, but again, I know people, unfortunately, AD carry at the fucking national level is obviously the least well-known position in the entire fucking LEC, but there were some players who weren't terrible I saw play AD carry in EU Masters. Some of those guys looked okay, so I would hope that that's not like a long-term attempted position. Because again, the Rogue people I know, the sad thing is they're one of those orgs where they try to like spin the whole angle of like, yeah, we love all our players, it's like a family. It's like, yeah, guess what? I have a family with some members of that shit as well. Like I wouldn't tell you to sign some of my family members as your fucking CEO or be the star office manager. I'd say, no, he's garbage. He's in my family, I know. So let's see if you really like a family, because family has harsh truths. You don't have any harsh truths, Rogue. You just have a harsh chance of fucking winning games in League of Legends. So anyway. Who is left? There's one left.
XL.
Right, XL. I always forget about XL because that's what I think should happen to XL as an org, as a team. No, what's the point in XL is basically my question to you, Vedius. I have a question for you. What's
XL is a great home for North American coaches. D-Lim, Alec Warren, and Tim Kiro are all my friends, and I wish them the best.
Loco, it's weird, isn't it? Because all your mates who are coaches, like they actually are just gradually going down and down and down and down and down.
It's
as far
like,
as I can tell.
I'm Bill Belichick. You take the assistants away from Bill Belichick and you let them fly on their own. They don't fly. They fucking crash. I'm Bill Belichick.
He's not, because here's the difference. Bill Belichick made some of his players. You were made by your players. So different scenario on that one.
Sure. But anyways, XL, no Mickey yet. There's this guy named Special playing. He is very, very special. He is literally one of the worst Sylases I have ever fucking seen. I have not seen a Sylas this bad. I have never seen a Sylas this fucking bad. And yeah, like, I'm just not excited for XL. Like, I genuinely am friends with the coaches and I wish they do well, but why the fuck did you pick up Mickey? Like, what the fuck is going on? Like, holy fucking shit. I don't understand this team. I don't understand some of their draft. They picked a weird all AD comp versus Schalke, and versus Rogue they played Ezreal Yumi instead of playing Sivir Yumi. They got Sylas and Yumi and they still lost. Like, this team is... I am not feeling this team.
I agree. I mean, I was really critical of them on like up day. I don't think the acquisition of Mickey made a lot of sense. I was also pretty against the acquisition of Hishon too. I think that, don't get me wrong, Hishon I think is a fine player. He's definitely LEC caliber. He can compete at this level. It's not my issue with him, but I think that we've seen his ceiling. I think that we've seen what he's clearly capable of. And I think that you're not, like, to me, if you're like acquiring Hishon, then you're aiming for like short-term success where you kind of want to see immediate results rather than like the long-term payoff. And I was very surprised that they let Jeskla go. What would have made more sense to me is if they like had Hishon and Jeskla together and like you kind of shared time, because like you'd want to grow your talent, right? Mm-hmm. You would hope that you have Hishon in there for like the short-term benefit so that he can help make Jeskla better. But then at the same time, Jeskla as a young AD carry is like growing and developing and become like a long-term payoff. Mm-hmm. And like when you look at who else they have on their roster, like a lot of people talk up Cadril. I don't think he had the great first week, but I definitely think he had a good split overall in spring. And Expect, I feel like, is playing out of his mind right now. I think Expect is doing a great job. So like, I think that there could have been potential here, but I think it's just a little short-sighted, and I don't think it's a massive payoff. And even then, like we've seen too many mistakes from Hishon in the first two games now for it to be written off as like.
Be careful when you flame Yarnan, Vedius. Hell has no fury like a woman scorn.
Listen, me and Vedius have already sorted that one. I've told him I'm the fucking heavy reinforcements artillery. If he needs anything, I'm like a fucking neck suit. I just come down behind him and I'm like, right, let's go. You want to talk shot on analysts? Because here's the thing: as long as you're just doing real analysis, you can't complain about that. Like, it's not like he's fucking hard flaming him like I would. And by the way, don't worry, I'll absolutely hard flame Jan if he does bad. And not just for that reason, because that's just what you're allowed to do. Believe it or not, that is the world we live in.
I'm not going to mention which player, but I was coaching a European player, and then after that European player had a ex-girlfriend, like their relationship was over, and then she started flaming our team, and one thing she started flaming me for was how I dressed on stage, and she's like, oh, I hate the way he dresses, he's a terrible coach. Like, I'm like, okay, first of all, you don't even fucking know how I coach, and second of all, I dress fine, but EU girlfriends on Twitter are fucking scary.
Enough said about that, the better.
Yeah, I will not go down that rabbit hole. I will say that my opinions as an analyst are not affected by the comments made on Twitter. And my opinion of Hjanen is that I do believe that he can compete at an LEC level. Like, I think he's proven that in his career. But I also think that he has showcased his ceiling. And, like, I think it's a solid ceiling, to be fair to him. Like, getting smashed by Uzi, that's not a bad ceiling. Do you know what I mean?
I put him in the same box as I put Senkox earlier. They clearly could be on an LEC team, and they could probably be a decent player. You know, if you the problem is, I will say this. I don't necessarily blame teams when they don't pick up those players, because if you were asking me to pick a team that they should be on, I'd kind of have to craft the team so that they made sense in the balance of the team. And that wouldn't be, that's not the same as if you, like, the difference is if I offer you a player like Opset, you're going to make the team around him, but because he's the best player. Like, that's the difference. Like, you could put them in many teams, whereas like some of these players, Yarn, etc., they need the right team. And that's the problem, I think, about XL is like, I agree. It's not really the right team. Like, if anything, if you had a bad team anyway, why not give Jeskler a little bit more of a try and see what he actually does in the summer split? Maybe he turns out to be a better player than Hjanen. Whereas, yeah, if you bring in Hjanen, he's a decent, like, stabilizing piece because he's all right and he has experience. But, like, where are the strong points elsewhere on this team? Like, I agree. Expect's not a bad player. They don't really have star players on this team, to be honest.
I will also say, like, I love Kasing. I really enjoy talking to him. I think he has a lot of knowledge about the game.
Dorian taught me if you have to say nice things before you talk about someone.
I literally just said, I just did it, didn't I? Nice.
Come on,
bud. Let's hear it.
What has he really done over the last year? Right. I mean, the reality is, he did an interview where he said one of the things that made it difficult for him last split was that he kind of had to teach a young AD carry how to compete in an LEC level, which hurt his ability for growth, right? So now that he's playing with Hjanen, he's hoping that provides a little bit more stability and consistency, that he can grow and get better as a player. So I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt in that regards, but then he has to showcase growth, and he has to showcase that he can be a top support in Europe, because like when we talk about top support in Europe, when was the last time that Kasing was in that conversation?
Back when he used to play with Hjanen, back in H2K, right?
Yeah, I mean,
pretty much.
That's fair.
A few years back.
So yeah, I agree with you. I think the best player on that team right now is Expect, outside of that, this team doesn't excite me a lot.
I have to say,
I can't wait to see what happens when Mickey joins, though. I legitimately, like, I think I do not think that acquisition is great, but you can't wait to see what happens, right? Because you don't actually know. You really don't know.
It's a car accident. It's not, you don't look at it. You look at it because it's like, ugh. You don't look at it because you want to look at it.
I agree, though. The Kasing one is like the one that's a killer for me, because when we talk about that era, I mean, sadly, it was 4 years ago now when he used to play in H2K. Fucking hell, this guy was a good player. Like, here's the thing, Vedius, if you come from the UK, traditionally, we haven't had many really good players, right? Like, obviously, like, Snoopy, basically, by the time LCS came along, was washed up. Yeah. Freddy122 wasn't really like,
isn't it Maxlor Alfari?
Hey, I'll never forget that Alistair top lane at Worlds with SK Gaming. You know, he used to get Aatrox bans as well, but I agree with you. Freddie
obviously, you had Alfari was a pretty good player. Maxlor, I mean...
Who's the jungler? Who was the jungler that used to play for Super Hot Crew?
Oh, right. Impaler.
Impaler.
He was all right, but he wasn't really that great. But the point is, you see, none of these, except with the context of like Alfari in terms of like how good he was at his role, none of them were really star players for my money. Yeah. Like Kasing actually at one point in time legit was one of the best playmaking supports. He was a really fucking strong player. And at the time, that was when Hjanen at the time had his first boost. So people were like, wow, what a great bot lane this is, like complement each other so well. So I'll give the outside chance that again, maybe you can reignite some past connection, you know, maybe you understand how each other wants to play. But it has been depressing because the last few years for Kasing, I've just seen his talent atrophy, waste away. Like for me, the key for me was when he had that chance to go and play in TSM. Mm-hmm. He was there for one tournament, and that's where for me, like I was out on him because unfortunately, as a player, I've read a lot of his interviews, I've followed a lot of his career. He's someone who strikes me as he had the skill set in the game to be a very good player, but I don't think he had like the insane drive to do it. I don't think he like wanted to be the best player or I don't think he had like the winner's mentality in the same. I think to him, he just wanted to be in a good team, do his part, you know, hey, don't put too much of the spotlight on me, I'm just a player. Hey, I'm a cool guy. Seems to have a very good personality, by the way, complimentary figure in the team. But the problem is when you want to be a star player, mindset's part of it as well. It isn't just the skill set, because if you don't have the mindset to go with the skill set, you won't even test those limits. You won't play up to them. You won't be like an aspect in your team that's warps the rest of the team around you, and therefore you are a key element. So now I have to look past his name and just say he's just a below average LEC support. Like I can't even look at the name anymore and go, could be so good. Like I feel like those times have passed sadly.
Yikes. Perkz thing.
The world we live in, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it's a little sad, isn't it? Yeah.
Because that's the reason why, if anyone wants to know, that's the reason I always flame Kasing the last few years. Because he's one of those guys where if someone's like giving up like that, I want to like try and ignite it back again. I want them to try and have a game where they're like, see, I told you I could still play. It's like, right, keep doing that. But he just takes the beating. He's just like, oh, even more foreign. It's like, well, even I'm sad at this point in time. Yeah, I'll give you a break or something, mate. Fucking hell, it's not going well, is it?
Wow. Well, there we are. So, expectations are G2, Splyce, Fnatic, Origen, Misfits, Schalke, preliminary playoff run.
Week 1 playoff team.
A week 1 playoff.
It's got to set the expectations.
Okay.
All right, who do you think actually has like the biggest of all the teams in the league? Who has the chance to go the highest up from where they are now? Like, is there anyone who has big variability for you?
Ooh. I mean, probably. I'm going to say SK. If they can learn how to play the game, that team can be scary. I think that team can be scary. I think they've got the mechanics in order to compete with some of the best. They just need to understand what a side lane is, and then they'll be good.
No, I would agree with that one. Like, I would also say if you watched the first week, you haven't fully yet seen what Sakura can actually do. Like, this guy, because as you say, the problem is Selfmade didn't have that hot start, and he's obviously the player that you want as your first win condition. If those two players play really well, this team could do some real damage. Like, they could be competing for like 4th in the league or something. Like, I think that like the potential is big there, even though at the moment it'd be a bit unreasonable to just give them that status already. They haven't done it yet.
I think Misfits, because there's a second version of Misfits with Kirei and Leader. I really like the potential of Misfits. So if it doesn't work out with Febby and Maxlord, there is a different mid and jungle duo that they could run and they can make the team work. So I feel like Misfits is another team that can shoot up a lot. Okay.
And then I'll just point out, because this is what I do, that neither of you picked Schalke, so fuck you for your earlier comments where you're trying to...
I'm just mentioning one of the teams. Oh my god. I love Schalke.
All I'm saying... I set up traps, that's what I do, okay? And you think to yourself, but I didn't step into the thing. It's like, yeah, that's the point. The trap was actually...
Your question was, who do you think has the biggest gap between where they are now and where they could be? My gap for Schalke isn't very big.
Exactly.
Where they are now,
can't be that good then, can they?
Get a little bit better.
Exactly.
I still think that little bit better is a lot better than some of the bottom end teams.
All right.
Exactly. I'm the only one who found an answer to the trick question.
Let's hit on a final topic and then let's end the show.
All right.
Sure.
Dota or League of Legends auto chess.
I know nothing about it.
Tactical.
I've never seen anyone like Locodoco in my life. I've never seen anyone like him. He's the guy, right, where you could be in the middle of like a really interesting discussion and he's like, did you hear about the politics in Venezuela right now? It's like, what? Where did that come from?
What do you want me to say?
I guess like reset the filters.
Wait, like, you guys are not hyped? Teamfight Tactics, that's the new League of Legends mode, but it's pretty much a brand new game. I'm so fucking excited.
Joke, so again, not everyone follows on Twitter, so my joke is, wow, they made a new version of League of Legends just for NA since they can't play side lanes. Teamfight Tactics, cool. Maybe they can learn some of that. And then the other joke I was going to make was, it's weird because Teamfight Tactics hasn't even come out, but Papa Smithy already told me that SK Telecom could be really good at the early game of it, and Loco predicts if you just give them a week, they'll probably be the best anyway. And weirdly, Azael's already predicted Team Liquid to beat anyone 3-1.
Oh my god.
Whatever. There's all the memes. I've stacked them all together now. Big sandwich. Take a big bite out of that shit meme sandwich.
Duncan, do you remember what you said regarding like, Riot Games, like what is it? They haven't even made one game. How can I expect them to make them make a second game? Well, they went the route again of, we're not going to make a new game. We're just going to revolutionize a game that's already good. And this is the first like big studio standalone auto chess. Like they got to auto chess faster than Valve did. So I actually think it's going to be a hit.
Sure. Well, the problem with this, right, is I will immediately recuse myself from this conversation because I've never played auto chess. I don't particularly care about other games that aren't the main esports games that I play. Like, I gave up being a gamer in that sense years and years ago. I just do esports shit now. Like, I live esports, so I don't even know really what the appeal of auto chess was personally. So
It's so fun.
Do you ever play at Vedius auto chess?
I play auto chess occasionally. Yeah.
What's
I
fun
haven't
about
recently.
it?
So I like the I like learning about like mechanics of games, and I think it has some quite interesting mechanics. But I'm just naturally a very competitive player, so anything that has a ladder on it I get very into because I like being better than other people. So when auto chess came out, I actually didn't play it for a really long time, but then I went to MSI, and we were on that like nighttime schedule, so a lot of people around me were playing auto chess, and I learned passively through them. But yeah, like I'm quite excited for the game, but I don't know anything about it. I've heard that there's a weird carousel thing in the middle, and I've heard that some of the mechanics are different from auto chess. But it's gonna be really cool. It's gonna be fun. I've already tweeted out that I'm gonna commit to mages, and then I got yelled at, and they were like, apparently they're spellcasters, not mages. And then I'm like, well, I'll call them wizards instead then. So there you go. I'm gonna play wizards. And that's all I have on that. That was a really shit question, Loco.
Wow,
Have you got any better ones?
Come on, Loco. What do you think about fucking League of Legends version of auto chess?
I think it's going to be so fucking successful. I think auto chess is such a fun game, and I think it's such a easy game to. It's not an easy game to get into, but once you learn it, it's such an easy game to spend more and more time with. Like you can play with
loads of fun.
You can play with your friends at a very different skill level. It's very streamable game. It's very easy to interact with chat.
I hope it's faster. Like there you go. I'll contribute to the conversation a little bit. I hope it's faster than auto chess because right now, on average, games like between 30 to 40 minutes. It doesn't feel like 30 to 40 minutes, but it would be nicer if the game overall was just like a little bit faster paced. So that's my only contribution to this conversation. If we've got nothing esports related, I'm gonna go have my dinner now.
All right. I think we can call it here. What about you, Duncan?
Yeah, it's the end.
Duncan, could you shout out Spotify and ListenLoco? The Patreon.
As we mentioned on the last episode, we have a Patreon, and it is patreon.com/ListenLoco. You can support us there and receive many different perks depending on what tier you do. And then also, if you're one of those people who like needs to work out or go to work or has children or whatever the fuck you're wasting your life with, then you can listen to us via an audio podcast on Spotify and assume all the other shit as well.
All right.
There's a spider in my room, so don't mind me while I just on that.
Someone makes some shit joke about Broxers trying an ill-timed Elise gank or something. You know, that's how bad his shot call is. But anyway, that's the end of the episode. Cut off there.
Okay. Vedius, thank you so much for being on.
The spider!
All right. Duncan, I'm going to go to the other screen and then drop the call. Thank you guys so much for being on the show. I'll talk to you guys later.
Thanks. Bye.
So thank you to all our Patreons. If you donate here, you're going to be on this list. You can see everyone that donated. Iron is the $1, bronze is the $5, silver is $10. And for all you gold donators, William Hishon and Tobias Bernasconi, thank you so much for contributing and making the show possible.